Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you tonight to our November 10th Tuesday night commission meeting. At first, I'd like Matt to introduce Zoom so that we can let them be a part of our meeting tonight too.
Absolutely. I'd like to thank at this time those joining remotely. I'm going to ask that when the city clerk, Deanna Riley, called the member of each commission members, at this time we only have one joining remotely. I was able to test that Joe McCall can hear me. Commissioner McCall, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
I'd like to ask those that are attending virtually, please raise your hands and let us know that you'd wish to speak, and I will inform the mayor for you to be recognized. You can use the raised hand feature in Zoom by clicking the participants icon at the bottom center of your screen or at the top of your screen in the control bar, depending on what device you're using. The location feature is based on the device that you're using to access the meeting. If you're dialing in by phone, you can dial *9 to unmute yourself. I will not be able to unmute you. Everyone is muted at this time. When you're recognized, you will be asked to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. The Indian Rocks Beach City Commission meeting, which is convening pursuant to the executive orders issued by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis, allowing local government bodies to conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location, and utilizing communication media technologies such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.545B2 Florida statute. You've already heard from Matt. The members, Deanne, it's your turn.
Mayor Cookie Kennedy.
Here.
Vice Mayor Phil Hanna.
Here.
Commissioner Diane Flagg.
Here.
Commissioner Edward Hoopnagel.
Here.
Commissioner Joe McCall.
Here.
The members of the City Commission are here and accounted for.
Thank you. And at this time, we are going to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would everyone please stand for just a few seconds? As of tomorrow is Veterans Day, and I'd like for all of us to honor our veterans. Thank you. You may be seated.
Mayor Kennedy, may I state for the people on Zoom and in the audience to make sure they state their name for the record and the address very clearly. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne. And with that, we will go to presentations. We have our report from the Pinellas Sheriff on file. If there is anything extra that the Sheriff's Department would like to say tonight, are you okay? All right, thank you. I also like to tell everyone in the audience that 15 minutes before our meetings, our commission meetings, the Sheriff is always here if you would like to talk to him privately, okay? Our report from Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue is also on file so that you may look at that. It is also on our website. And with that, we'll go to presentations by the Florida City and County Managers Association. And Greg, I would like to hand that over to you.
Thanks. I want to welcome Matt Spohr. Matt is the city manager for Safety Harbor. Glad to have you, Matt.
Oh, thank you. Do you need my name and address?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Matthew Spohr, City Manager, City of Safety Harbor, 750 Main Street, Safety Harbor, Florida, 34695. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners, City Manager, staff, and residents of the beautiful city of Indian Rocks Beach. My name is Matthew Spohr, and I am the City Manager of Safety Harbor. We've already gone over that. I serve as the Florida City County Managers Association District 7 Director and a member of the FCCMA Public Management Matters Committee. On behalf of FCCMA, we are privileged to present the City of Indian Rocks Beach with a certificate celebrating 2020 as your 50th year as a Commissioner Manager form of government, as recognized by the International City County Management Association, ICMA. On behalf of the officers, Board of Directors, and membership of FCCMA, we offer our sincere congratulations on this milestone achievement. The council manager form of government was created to help separate administration from direct political influence and establish merit-based practices within local government. It is modeled after a corporation's framework, with voters being your stockholders, selecting a council being the board of directors, who in turn appoint a manager or the professional executive to advise the council and implement its actions through ordinances and policies. In the state of Florida, nearly 70% of all 411 cities, towns, villages operate under this council manager form of government, and of the 67 counties in the state, all but 2 are professionally managed. The city of Indian Rocks Beach is recognized as a champion of the council manager form of government, where you have a city commission that works together in a professional manner to make decisions and establish policies that are in the best interest of your stakeholders. Indian Rocks Beach is fortunate to have an FCCMA member leading your city, and City Manager Greg Mims. Mr. Mims has over 37 years of local government management and leadership experience. Greg is respected by professionals around the county, state, and country as an individual who maintains the highest integrity and ethics and is always willing to promote their community while helping those cities that may need assistance. Mr. Mims leaves a staff committed to providing the highest quality of life possible to the residents of Indian Rocks Beach. On behalf of FCCMA and all other commissioner-manager communities within our county and the state of Florida, we congratulate the city of Indian Rocks Beach on the milestone achievement of being a commissioner-manager form of government for 50 years. At this time, I'd like to present the commission and city manager with this certificate. Congratulations.
Come on down.
I'll jump in.
With that, we will go to public comment. And before, just like to ensure an accurate record of the meeting. When addressing the city commission, the members of the public must first state and spell his or her name if you're on Zoom, and address. Throughout the meeting, we ask that all presenters and commentators identify themselves by naming each time they speak unless they have been introduced or specifically called on by name. Additionally, please be mindful of not speaking over one another. And with that, during this 3 minutes, is there anyone who would like to come forward in the audience for 3 minutes?
Madam Mayor, I have 2 comments in the chat section I'd like to read aloud, please.
Perfect.
With regard to parking, we are not Bel Air.
That's not.
Apologies.
Public comment.
We'll wait for the agenda item for the clerk. I don't see any participants at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt.
Actually, I do have a Mary that would like to speak. Mary, can you please unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record?
Hello, everyone. My name is Lee Wilkerson. My address, 490 Harbor Drive North. And my name is LeeWilkerson.
Thank you. Please continue. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. My comment relates to parking. I have been involved in the discussion on the
Lee, we will let you speak during our agenda item that has to do with parking.
This is a different item to a different part about parking. Would
Okay.
you rather me wait? Would you rather
No,
me
no.
hold the comment?
That's,
Is it on the agenda?
No, it's not on the agenda. It's not
okay,
on.
you may speak.
Thank you. Our city parks, including our dog park, tennis courts, and child play areas, I feel are meant to serve our residents first. Parking in our city-owned parks should be limited to residents and with a time limit. Using signage, we should be able to limit long-term visitor parking at our dog park, tennis courts, and child play areas. Please make this a priority discussion item in the same spirit of our proposed parking ordinance. That's it. Thank you, Diane and Commission.
Thank you, Lee. Hi, Don.
Hey, Don House, 2104 Beach Trail. So Cookie and I, I'm talking about beach easement, the easements that they're asking for. Cookie and I had a nice conversation this past week. And I think we both kind of came up with the same thing, that Indian Rocks Beach isn't going to see any sand properly. Those of us that have been there a long time, we never asked for the sand. They never asked to put the sand there. And now they come back with this other stuff, like when they set it the high water mark. And I don't know, when I read the qualifications about how the high water mark was supposed to be set, they were supposed to have interaction with the property owners. The people that I know that have been here a long time never had any interaction with setting the high water mark. I don't know where that line came from. But the bottom line is, Cookie made a great point that said people are not going to come to the table to talk about this. And I think the reason for that is there's not a whole lot of trust. Indian Rocks Beach has the lowest percentage of people that have agreed positively for the easements. I think there's a lack of leadership within the city for this. I think, well, it's three things. I think it's an overreach from the Army Corps. It's an overreach from Pinellas County, which did not do their job in the first place, and a lack of leadership within the city. I have heard Greg Menn say there's people that won't sign this even if there's a bus getting ready to run over them. He's absolutely right, because this thing has a lot of implications that need to be addressed. They're not being addressed. It's going to create the people on the beach will be, I said 3 years ago, when I was running against Cookie, I wouldn't have signed the last one. You know, maybe we could all get the Happy Fiddler, whatever it is, easement. We could all get sand at that time. But you know, this is not something that is going to go away. And if we're going to get sand, we need some real comprehensive leadership on this, and just not let people have to come to the table. And when they come to the table, they have to be heard. And that's not what's happening to us that live on the beach. We have a lot of concerns, and we're not going to get sand unless they're addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Is there anyone else who'd like to come up at this time under public comment about any item that is not on the agenda tonight? Hearing none, is there anyone from Zoom? Okay. And we'll close the public comments. I'll ask for a report of the city manager. You can go first tonight. I asked you.
Thanks, Cookie. Unfortunately, I will report to you tonight that about 4 o'clock this afternoon, started getting text messages from the emergency management folks, and the tropical storm has shifted over to the east, and they think it'll shift over a little more by 10 o'clock, in the 10 o'clock update. So, you know, we've been working on this for a few days, clearing out drains, doing a lot of proactive work. In the morning, we'll have some guys out that'll be picking up limb debris. So a lot of people are probably going to run out tomorrow and trim things, but I asked the public that are watching by Zoom tonight or on the YouTube channel not to put anything out, because we're going to make one run through town and try to pick up. When I get out of here tonight, that'll be where my focus will be now for the next day or so with that. So it doesn't look like a big rain event. It's finally picking up some speed. They still say it's going to diminish in size and wind speed by the time it gets up to our area, but it is something that we're aware of and we're working on, along with all the other ordinances and things that we've got going on. Randy and I have started working on the Duke Energy franchise agreement. We're about a year off from that, but I want to get that done early. It's their franchise agreement's pretty cookie cutter, and we're up to the max percentage that we can charge Duke, but I want to go ahead and get that worked up. So that will be coming to you sometime probably in the spring of the year for you to approve. One of the things that we released last week and we've got on the website is an update of the last several years' projects, capital projects. There's a list of things that we've done. There's also a map. At the December meeting, I probably will go into that a little more in detail, not tonight. And then also Randy and I are working on the RFP that'll go out sometime in the next month or so for magistrate. You know, it was an item that was approved in the budget where we have a magistrate that would deal with code issues, where if we had a code issue that we were having trouble resolving, we'd have a magistrate. The city's had a magistrate before, so there'll be a RFP going out. The way that process will work will be we'll receive the proposals. Randy and I may rank them, screen them for you, and then at a future city commission meeting, those would be on there. And we'll have discussions with you about it. We can bring them in. Y'all can interview them. You can do it however you want. But we're gonna start that process to get the magistrate system going. And for the sake of time, that's all I have. All right.
Thank you, Greg. Does anyone on the commission have any questions for Greg tonight? Commissioner McCall, do you have any questions for Greg? You're muted.
No, thank you.
Thank you. With that, our city attorney, do you have a report tonight?
Yes, Mayor, as you can surely see by the agenda, we have plenty to do tonight. One thing that the manager asked that I get ahead of as far as issues and discussions, you may recall that last month as we discussed the golf cart ordinance, which is on second reading tonight, one of the issues that came up in my memo, though not addressed in the ordinance, was electrical bicycles and the regulation thereof. In reviewing it, as I noted during the last meeting, the Florida legislature did pass a statute this year on the regulation of electrical bicycles, treating them precisely as bicycles. Motor vehicles or vehicles generally are regulated by chapters 316 and 318 of the Florida statutes. To say they are clear as mud is a very generous compliment as to those statutory sections. There's a lot of cross-referencing and a lot of inferences that can be drawn. There is an argument to be had that electrical bicycles could not be operated on beaches because vehicles can't be operated on beaches, and bikes, for some purposes in Florida statutes, are treated as vehicles. The section that language comes from does not define a vehicle, and courts have customarily, when left with no definition of a vehicle, chosen to impose the plain meaning of a truck or car. So that is to say that there's nothing in the Florida statutes that definitively bars the operation of a motor vehicle, of a electrical bicycle on the beaches. One of the questions presented was, do the statutes already prohibit that? There's nothing that definitively prohibits that. If we desire to regulate electrical bicycles, we can do so as it relates to the city's streets, highways, roadways, shoulders, bicycle lanes, and bicycle or other multi-use paths. Noticeably absent from that list is beaches. As you've heard in public comment and otherwise, the issue in past meetings, the issue of the beaches and who owns what and where we regulate gets, again, messy and a little bit more complicated. So even though we could adopt an ordinance without issue, regulating the operation of electrical bicycles on the city streets, sidewalks, pathways, etc., there's not clear authority to state that the city could do so on the beaches. And even if we were to do so on the beaches, there would be an issue as to where are we specifically referring to, as we've seen with other issues on the beaches as well. So that's where that issue stands. And if we desire to workshop that as it relates to the other transportation avenues and arteries of the town or the city, we can certainly look at that in the future. Obviously, there's no shortage of ordinances on the agenda tonight or initiatives that this city is looking to tackle, especially as it relates to transportation. But I wanted to make sure you were aware of that development, the output from that research. And I know Commissioner Hoofnagel especially specifically asked to look into what ability we would have, if any, in that regard. So without getting too much into the precise citations and cross-references, that's where that stands. Otherwise, Obviously, we've got plenty to do tonight. I won't belabor the point, and I'm available for any questions or concerns you have otherwise.
Do any of the commissioners have any comments for the city attorney? With that, I will go to the commission. Vice Mayor Hannah, do you have a report tonight?
No, in view of the length of our agenda tonight, I will pass.
Okay. Commissioner Hofnagel, do you have a report tonight?
Yes, quickly, I wanted to express gratitude to the company that has invested in making the Red Lion a new restaurant, and observed that nothing really has happened for a long time, and communicate that I've gotten some questions and complaints from local residents, especially someone who lives right across the street, saying what's going on. It doesn't look like anything's happening. So just hoping that maybe there's some way we can encourage them to move along and continue the investments and turn it into something that the city will be proud to have in our limits.
Thank you, Ed. Commissioner Flagg?
Just quickly, we had the gazebo project, the renovations, and a little celebration last week. And if anybody hasn't seen it yet, especially when the lights are on in the evening, it's a nice addition to Cole Park. And that's thanks to Action 2000 members and the city to have that come about. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Flagg. Commissioner McCall, would you like to make a few comments?
Just briefly, I just wanted to thank Matt and his staff and the city of Indian Rocks Beach for allowing me to participate in this meeting remotely and making those accommodations for me. I do appreciate that. And Mayor, I know I sent the information regarding the turkey drive to you earlier this week. Are you going to handle that announcement?
It's up to you. I have it right here in front of me, but if you would like to, you may.
Nope. Go right ahead.
How are
I
you?
forwarded it to you. If it's in front of you, go right ahead.
Okay. How you doing?
I'm hanging in here.
Okay.
We're good.
With that, what Commissioner McCall is speaking on is our community turkey drive. And there are several locations starting on November 11, 2020, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the loading dock, if I'm correct, at Krabby Bill's. There are other places too, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Commissioner McCall?
Yes.
And
I can read them.
yes, would you please read it?
On November 13th, it can be dropped. November 11th is Krabby Bill's from 5 to 8. November 13th is the Anecdote Brewery. November 13th from 5 to 8. November 18th from 5 to 8 at Chicago Jack's. And November 20th is at 18 on the Rocks. Or you can drop them off anytime at Century 21 Bagans.
And the reason these are all brought to the food pantry and they're given out for those in need. So we really appreciate it. Commissioner McCall, do you remember how many? Wasn't it almost 300 last year?
Yes. Yeah, we were, I think, a little bit over 300. And yeah, and I mean, obviously this year's, there's more and more families that are in need. So the food pantry is, requesting as much as we can do. And Century 21 and these locations have kind of spread it out so people can, are not all gathered in the same area. So you can drop off, obviously the turkeys, frozen turkeys, or any other food items, non-perishable food items, and the food pantry will distribute them from there. The food pantry should be at each location each evening for collection also.
And because we're talking about the food pantry, I always want to remind everybody, especially around the holidays, that they are always looking for donations. They are looking for canned goods and products, personal products like shampoo and things of that nature. And you can always drop them off at the Episcopal Church or go on the website that they have for the food pantry, and you'll be able to see the hours. They have a big barrel outside and you can drop them in there too. So just to remind you.
Just briefly, Cookie, I apologize. I did forget to mention this event each year is actually done in partnership with the Indian Rocks Beach Homeowners Association. we basically head that up with Century 21, and I would like to highlight that Plumlee Realty has joined kind of the fight this year. So we do appreciate the new folks joining us.
Thank you, Joe. Just a couple quick items here. Obviously, we'll be closed on the 25th and the 26th, and our garage sale is citywide on the 21st, which is a Saturday, and also on the 22nd, which is a Sunday. We definitely want to wish all of you a very nice Thanksgiving. I brought this today because I wanted everyone to see. This was mailed out to every resident in our city, and when we have agenda items that are important to the citizens, we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to know what we're doing at our city and be as transparent as possible. And just quickly on the easement, I want to mention Don had come up here, and since we spoke, I did speak to our Congressman Charlie Crist, and his aide will be putting together a meeting, hopefully with John Bishop and maybe someone from the Corps of Engineers. And once we have more understanding of when that'll be and the perimeters, we will let you all know to try to do our share that we can do at the city level as far as the easements on the beach are concerned. With that, I'm going to go to additions and deletions. Do we have any tonight from any of the commission? Hearing none, we'll move forward to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Mayor?
Yes, you may read it.
Thank you very much. 2 items on the consent agenda this evening, Mayor. Item A, approval of the October 13, 2020 regular city commission meeting minutes. Item B, resolution number 2020-10, calling for a municipal general election for the purpose of electing at-large qualified candidates to fill the vacancies of 2 commissioner seats for 2-year terms. These are the only items on the consent agenda, Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to accept the consent agenda.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Motion carries. With that, we will move on to our public hearings. Public hearing 6A, ordinance number 2020-04. This is a second and final reading. And Randy, would you please read this in an agenda item?
Happily, Mayor. City of Indian Rocks Beach, ordinance number 2020-04. An ordinance of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 15, Schedule of Fees, Article 3, Planning, Zoning, Land Use, Section 15-21, Site Development Plan Review Fees, distinguishing fees based on commercial, multifamily, or single-family properties, including engineers as consultants to be paid by applicant if required, providing for legislative findings, and providing for an effective date hereof. This has been a second and final reading of ordinance number 2020-04, Mayor.
Thank you. And Randy, Greg, would you like to present tonight?
This is an update to the city code. Currently in the code, there's a generic plan review fee that really could be charged for any plan review that our city planner does. What this does, it breaks it out in 2 different fees, one for commercial type projects and one for residential. So that's really all we're doing, is splitting out 2 different fees. When we outsourced the permitting area, when we're looking back at our fees, it really didn't make sense to me to charge the higher fee for residential. So that's what this is, splitting out a higher fee for commercial and a fee for residential.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions at this time for our city manager? Hearing none. Matt, should we start with Zoom and see if there's any callers?
Madam Mayor, I don't see any activity in the chat window or any hands up.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone at this time who would like to speak on this agenda item? Please come forward. Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. And do we have a motion?
I move to approve ordinance 2020-04 on second and final reading.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any comments that you'd like to make at this time?
None.
And Commissioner Flagg? With that, Dan, would you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Hannah,
Yes.
Commissioner McCall,
Yes.
Commissioner Flag,
Yes.
Commissioner Buchagel,
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes, motion carries. With that, we will go to our public hearing 6B, ordinance number 2020-05. It is a second and final reading. And Randy, would you please do introductions?
Happily, Mayor. City of Indian Rocks Beach, ordinance number 2020-05, an ordinance of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, repealing section 74-1 of the Code of Ordinances concerning the prohibition of certain fishing activities, making related findings, and providing for codification, severability, and an effective date. This has been a second and final reading of ordinance number 2020-05. Commissioners, as you may recall, on first reading, we had some discussion about this matter, that it is just removing language from your code that is not operative, though there was some discussion about home rule principles and the ability to regulate. You know, I did add to the dialogue that what we're talking about is an area that is not necessarily within the city's jurisdiction, especially if we're talking about 1,000 feet out into the water. And so this isn't really about regulating our city, having nothing to do with the imprecise language in the code. FWC does explicitly have agency over these things. I really want to emphasize, because I know a lot of the dialogue last time focused on the concerns of safety of the residents and visitors and their families as they are in our coastal waters, engaged in recreation, and also the protections afforded fishermen as they engage in that recreational activity. This is not to say that it is open season and there are no regulations. It's simply to say that we are not the agency charged or tasked with doing so. FWC is, DEP may be, depending on how people are doing that. You know, there's permits required for certain forms of fishing. And also, as we discussed, and for anybody who's familiar with fishing, you never know what's going to be on the end of your hook. So absent some specific equipment, it's very difficult to say that somebody intended to specifically get what was on the end of the line at the end of the day. And so with that, all we're doing is bringing the code in conformity with the Florida Administrative Code and Florida statutes. Other communities in the state of Florida in the last 5 years even have done the same and encountered similar issues as they sought to regulate this. So we see this as a housekeeping matter as it relates to conforming local law to state law. And that's all I have to add on that, but I'm again happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for our city attorney for this agenda item?
Yeah. Randy, do you think it would make sense to, at least in our code, in case someone's reading through it, make a reference to the state statutes that govern this?
Whether or not it would make sense to, it's kind of a tough question. If we want to signal to people that something exists, sure, but it would be no more effective than signaling to them that traffic laws exist and other laws exist. It may not be something that's as intuitive or as known to people, especially visitors to our community, and I would leave the prudence of whether or not we do that in your capable hands as a commission.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCall, do you have any questions at this time?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. And with this, Matt, would you open for callers or anyone on the chat?
Absolutely. Just a general reminder for the audience at Zoom, you may use the chat or the raise hand feature. At this time, Madam Mayor, I don't see anything in the comments or any raised hands.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to come forward at this time to speak on this issue? You have 3 minutes. With that, we will close the public hearing, and I am looking for a motion.
Yep. I'll motion to approve. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Motion to approve.
So I
is-
motion to, approve ordinance number 2020-05, second final reading.
Is there a second? Second, Commissioner Hanna. Would either the maker or the second like to make a comment at this time? None? Any of the other commissioners? With that, Deanne, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Flag,
Yes.
Commissioner Buchagel,
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Hanna,
Yes.
Commissioner McCall,
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes, motion carries. We'll move on now to public hearing Agenda item 6C, ordinance number 2020-06, which is a second and final reading. And Randy, would you present this item?
Happily, Mayor. City of Indian Rocks Beach, ordinance number 2020-06. An ordinance of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 62, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 3, Operation of Golf Carts, Section 6240, Golf Carts, amending the title of the section to include low-speed vehicles and micromobility devices, amending the section to align it with state statutes, providing definitions for terms to be used in the section, providing for regulation of golf carts and low-speed vehicle operation on sidewalks, providing for the prohibition of micromobility scooters, providing for legislative findings, and providing for an effective date hereof. This has been a second and final reading of ordinance number 2020-06, Mayor. Again, commissioners, this is the second reading of this ordinance following what would really be months of workshops and discussions on the issues of golf carts for those who are, first-time visitors, long-time callers. We've been, I'm sure you've seen meetings in the past where this has come up in common and otherwise. And so this seeks to reconcile the aims of the community to protect the safety of its residents and visitors with the state statute. Some of the standout elements being that per state statute, you cannot require a driver's license for the operation of a vehicle ordinarily considered a golf cart. And I say that because sometimes there's also low-speed vehicles which can operate slightly faster, have to have augmented safety equipment, but may, to the common viewer, resemble a golf cart. And the rights and privileges that go with both those vehicles are different. During the last meeting, there was a lot of focus on the element of low-speed vehicles and their ability to travel north and south along Gulf Boulevard. That administrative oversight in drafting has been removed. That was not a firm policy mandate, but something that had just language that crept in and has since been removed. So that element is gone, and otherwise, this is submitted for your consideration. And I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions at this time for the city attorney?
Not at this time.
Commissioner, thank you, Commissioner McCall. With Matt, at this time, is there anyone who would like to address the commission that is on Zoom?
I don't see any participants, but I also want to remind the 4 people that are attending via phone, they can hit *9 to unmute themselves if they'd like to speak at this time. Would any of the 38 others like to speak at this time? No activity.
Thank you, Matt. And with that, we will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item? You have 3 minutes. State your name and your address. Hi, Don.
John House, 2104 Beach Trail. One thing I wanted to talk about was this stuff flying up and down the beach, but obviously you already covered that one. So, but I have another thing. I've got a couple of segues. Now, I'm assuming they're covered with this. Are they operated in the bicycle lane? Are they treated as bicycles? Or are they on sidewalks? Or how do you treat segues?
After you will.
Happy to address after comments and see.
After comments. We'll let
Oh,
you
okay.
address them.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Don. Yes, Matt.
I'd like to address John Thayer.
John Thayer, will you please unmute yourself?
Hi, John. John, would you like to speak at this time?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out how to unmute this thing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
John Thayer, 1819 Bay Boulevard, IRB. And I've sent plenty of emails to the city commission, and they understand my position on golf carts. This ordinance, while it's fixed this 16-year-old thing with golf carts and defined at great length the difference between a golf cart and a low-speed vehicle, actually has done nothing else to, solve the safety issues that, we've had with these things over the years. There was also a lot of confusion, as the city attorney already mentioned, after the first reading. In fact, the local paper appeared to be confused also because their article led off with IRB now allows low-speed vehicles on Gulf Boulevard, which was also the case. However, their article never mentioned once that they have to be licensed. The key thing here is they have to be registered and licensed. Shortly thereafter, I saw numerous carts going up and down Gulf Boulevard in the middle of the day. I probably saw 5 to 1, no license plates versus a plate. So apparently the residents are confused also. today I finally saw one with a license plate going up Gulf Boulevard, and it got my hopes up. But then they took a U-turn and went down the sidewalk for a half a block to get somewhere. So I don't know what this is going to do except to confuse the enforcement issue. That being said, low-speed vehicles are required by law, by Florida statute, to be registered and licensed. All right? And so they're not golf carts. And we've decided they're not golf carts because of the speed limits and other things. So now it appears that IRB and the Sheriff's Department are allowing illegal, unlicensed, low-speed vehicles on the city streets because Florida statute says they have to be licensed. So this may be something the city attorney should look into further before this thing gets done. Thank you.
Thank you, John, very much. Is there anyone else in the public who'd like to speak on this agenda item? Please come forward. Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and I'm going to open it for the commission. Randy, would you like to address any of the comments?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As it relates to segues, I mentioned earlier chapters 316 and chapter 318 are just wonders of legislative drafting. Another category of vehicles is a personal assistive mobility device. Those are regulated by chapter 316.2068. I'm of the opinion it would fall, a Segway would likely fall into that. And they ordinarily are allowed to be operated on a road or street where the posted speed limit is 25 miles per hour or less, on a marked bicycle path, on any street or road where bicycles are permitted, at an intersection to cross the road or street, even if the road or street has a posted speed limit of more than 25 miles per hour. And so that's where they are allowed. This commission is allowed to regulate the operation of such devices on its streets and sidewalks, much in the same way as the language we just discussed pertaining to electric bicycles. This ordinance does not do that. But that is the law, the state of the law as it relates to those elements. And it does say a valid driver's license is not required to operate those kinds of personal assistive mobility devices. As it relates to the broader points, I agree with and echo the residents' comments as it relates to the importance of the distinctions in the law. I can tell you that this ordinance is precise in its text and in the staffing on this, and the articulated notion that a license and registration is required for a low-speed vehicle is stated in black letter in the staffing for this. We need not echo chapter and verse of the statute. We've brought this into alignment with state statute. Candidly, even in talking with some of the law enforcement deputies who enforce these elements in other jurisdictions, they were not fully aware of all these distinctions as we developed this and did the legal research and brought this forward. And so we've clarified a major issue in the law to the benefit of not just this community, but others as well. And in doing so, we've made it very clear what is and is not required. I don't believe the ordinance to be unclear on that. The challenge as it relates to code enforcement, and we see this as a recurrent theme. One of the challenges for code enforcement is really just a philosophical one. Some people believe that by passing ordinances, we prevent behavior. That unfortunately is not how it ends up playing out in practice. What we do is we have a means for correcting behavior that the community collectively agrees it disfavors. So whether that is noise, trash cans being out a week, Christmas lights up too long, grass too high, it changes from community to community, and that's the beauty of home rule. But as it relates to code enforcement, I cannot promise you, as incredible as I am, that any ordinance I draft will prevent any one thing from happening in your community. But we can provide this community the tools it needs to address those social or safety ills that they wish to address. So I will not tell you that by passing this, you will not see another 12-year-old with 4 other 12-year-olds dangling off a golf cart. You will see people ride on sidewalks. The resolution or the cure to that is in having a tool that deputies, when they do have the resources or do witness it or are sensitized to it in a timely fashion, can say, hey, you're not allowed to do this. Here's the chapter and verse as to why. And whether they warn or use their discretion as to what the best enforcement mechanism is at that time is another discussion for another day. But I want to be very clear as we discuss this and other enforcement mechanisms or changes to your code. There is no code provision that will prevent people from violating that provision. So with that in mind, I turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Greg?
Let me address the code enforcement or law enforcement part of this. I've already started discussions with Captain Liner and the Sheriff's Office about the ordinance, and they've had this ordinance for weeks. It's like we got it on the website, y'all all about it. And whatever you wind up adopting, preferably the form that we have it, what will happen next is that the Sheriff's Office will begin the educational process with deputies on the rules and regulations of our city. And as Randy touched on, the Sheriff's Office provides law enforcement services for a lot of cities in the county. Everybody's rules are different. So we literally have to go through an educational process to get them up to speed on what our code is. And just like we talked about, there's the state code, even in this topic area, is clear as mud. And then people can argue about what something is and what it's not. But once you adopt this, we'll go through an exercise with the Sheriff's Office for those folks to be educated on what terms mean, what devices are. We got into this. There's a couple of things that Randy ran across that I knew a little bit about. I didn't know a lot about them. So there'll be educational, but I do want to stress what he just said is that, with as many golf carts as we have in town, and I've even had to call the Sheriff's Office on a golf cart that I've seen now 3 times coming across the drawbridge from Largo into town with no tag. It's catch them when we can, kind of thing. And I would just encourage the commission and the public, the people that are watching by Zoom tonight, or YouTube, or however you're watching it, to help us by, if you see somebody, we're not a huge town, but we do have several blocks. If you see somebody, pick up the phone and call the non-emergency number for the Sheriff's Office, because you can call and complain to me all you want that you saw it yesterday, and that doesn't do a thing for us. So it's education. I agree with the previous speaker there that we are a tourist town. People can rent golf carts now. There's golf carts at vacation rentals. So if we ever think we're ever going to educate everybody, you can just mark that off the list. It's never going to happen, because the person from Germany that's here for the week, there's no way we're catching. They're not going to know when they get here. But we'll do everything we can. But we need the public's help. But this is when the commission years ago made the decision to allow golf carts in any form to be on city streets, that is what it is, and we're having to deal with that. So, and I have one, by the way. Now I'm not 14, but I wish I was 14, but I have one. But so just be patient with it. You're going to see people violate it, just like you see people violate speed limits and other ordinances that we have, or state laws. If we all kind of work together, we can deal with most of them. But it's everybody working together and not waiting a day later to complain. But if you see it, pick up the phone and call somebody, and we'll do what we can. But it's a very complicated subject, and unfortunately, our friends in Tallahassee have not helped us with this issue either. That's all I have.
Thank you, Greg. Is there anyone on the commission that has any questions for Greg or Randy before I ask for a motion? Commissioner McCall?
I do not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing none, is there a motion?
Yep. I move to approve ordinance 2020-06 on its second and final reading.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any comments from either the maker?
No, I
Or
agree
second.
with all the points, right?
Everything okay? All right. With that, Deanne, would you call the roll?
Yeah.
Commissioner McCall?
No, thank you. Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. With that, we'll move on to 7A, other legislative matters. This is ordinance number 2020-07 on a first reading. And Randy, if you would please read.
Happily, Madam Mayor, City of Indian Rocks Beach, ordinance number 2020-07. An ordinance of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 62, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 2, Stopping, Standing, and Parking Section 62-39 of the Code of Ordinance by adding the following provision. Section of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Indian Rocks Beach by adding Section 62-39 to provide for controlled parking in residential areas, to authorize parking by permit only in designated residential areas with penalties and limited exceptions, to provide for the issuance, renewal, and potential revocation of parking decals for permit parking, providing for severability, resolution of conflicts, and an effective date. This has been a first reading of ordinance number 2020-07 by title only, Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. At this time, I'm going to have Greg review this ordinance, and then if, Randy, you would like to do any follow-up after that, I'll have you do that.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. Let me just take a few minutes to go over kind of where we've been and where we are today. The city, like other beach towns, has dealt with parking issues for the life of its history. But particularly back in 2014, the city commission had a couple of work sessions. One was widely attended. We had a room full of folks here and the topic was generally the beach and things associated with the beach. And as a result of that, there were a lot of changes or things that were implemented. One was we added additional solid waste collection pickup on the beach. We added additional mechanical raking of the beach. We consolidated multiple signs. You know, you can go down the beach. Where people just tried to do the right thing through the years. We had 9 signs up at beach access. And, you know, I don't know what y'all do when y'all go to the beach, but most people want to stop, read 9 signs. So we consolidate all those messages into one more decorative sign. We got a lot of good feedback from that. I think people read those. We enhance parking enforcement. One thing to remember as you go through this discussion tonight on this ordinance is that because it's tied directly to resident decals, is that there's 67 resident parking spaces in town, 61 of which are at beach accesses. So we have 3 spaces at the boat docks down at the park in the business district, and we have reserved spaces at the dog park where the residents can go there. And we were going to add 3 resident spaces at the Brown Park that I've held off installing more signs until y'all decide which direction to go. So, and keeping resident decals in mind, the way the ordinance was interpreted for decades, or as long as we've had it here, is that anybody that owned property or a resident would receive a decal. And what that's resulted in through the years is that, like this decal cycle we're in right now, that'll end in December, and we'll start another 2-year cycle in January. In this 2-year period, we've issued about 2,500 parking decals. So you can do the math of decals versus spaces and kind of how that works. And then when we get into the next ordinance, 2020-08, we'll talk more in detail about resident decals and who gets them and where you can use them and all that. I won't get into that right now. This ordinance increases, back in 2014, the commission authorized and approved an ordinance to increase the parking fine from $20 to $40. At that time, the same options that you talked about at your work session back 2 or 3 months ago are the same today. What the commission really spent their time talking about with the public input was 2 options. One was to implement what we refer to in the work session as option A, where the city administration would go about installing no parking signs on side streets and other streets where we had issues with beach parking. And that's what the consensus was. But there also at that time was a discussion about doing something similar to what you're talking about doing tonight, and that was to say that during certain hours of the day in certain areas of the city that the only people that could park on the street were residents who had decals. So that all those things were talked about in 2014. After 2014, with the direction by the commission, we began to implement the installation of no parking signs. And at the tune of about 230 signs, virtually every side street and now into the neighborhoods, there's a wide area that's, some streets are for the first block are no parked on both sides. Some majority are parked on one side or the other. In March of this year, you had an agenda item where we talked about street parking, and we had a good crowd here for that. There was wide opinions about what the city should do or not do. And the commission asked the staff to put back on the agenda a full-blown work session where we could talk about the matter again. So in June 30th, 2020, the city, a month ahead of time, announced the work session. We had a afternoon work session that went on for about 4 hours. That really, all these different ordinances that you're talking about, the three that you already dealt with, and the ones that you have remaining, all those we talked about that at that work session. And then to move the conversation along, because it was what the commission at the time, the commissioners that were seated at the time talked about, I offered to the commission that you should, as a starting point of conversation or dialogue, that you could consider those two options. And to be clear about what they were, is option A is continue what we started in 2014, or option B would be to adopt an ordinance that in some form would require a resident parking decal to park on a street. And the area that we're talking about, to be clear about it, is from 5th, or the main intersection north, all the way to 28th, the whole east side of Guth Boulevard. So everything in that jurisdiction, the fingers, all that's included. Because if you remember back when we had the work session, we got people on La Hacienda, we got people people away from the beach that expressed concerns about parking. So the draft ordinance that we'll talk about tonight, it's been out on the website. Cookie says a postcard out. It's been available to the public for a month. So the consensus at the July 23rd meeting was for the city attorney and I to draft an ordinance. We did that. We finished the draft. It was public, and it was posted to the public and posted on October the 12th. At the same time, we put it out in a press release. We sent it to the two primary civic organizations, and they sent it out their list by email. I've already mentioned the postcard. Today or tonight, what you have on the ordinance is that draft ordinance. And I've already given you the confines of the area that it regulates. After full discussion, and by that, and I'm just at this point, I'm making a recommendation to you. After full discussion, which is Randy and I answer any questions that you have about the draft ordinance, because you've had it for a while. After you take public comment, either in person, Zoom, or phone call, what I would suggest you do is at that point in the meeting is consider three options. One is at that point, I'd ask the mayor, or suggest the mayor that you poll the commission and see if there's a consensus to go forward with the ordinance. If there is, then the other two options that you have is that you would recommend you discuss it, send it on through the way it is. With any changes, it'll be on the December 8th agenda. Or you can amend the ordinance, clarify things. I've had questions about, well, can we add this, add that? So that's really your two options. Is that I would suggest strongly that you take all the input, we're asking to have full discussion. But before you get into having real detailed discussions about amending this or changing the wording of that, I'd recommend that y'all reach a consensus whether you even want to go forward with it or not. Because if you don't want to go forward with it, there's no sense in us spending an hour clarifying and adding language. So, Mayor, I know y'all had a lot of time to look at this. We've had multiple work sessions on this. I'll stop now, and for the commission, if there's any questions the commission has or things that we need to clarify or answer. Before I do that, Randy, is there anything else that you want to say before?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple notes procedurally. There's this supposition when we bring an ordinance to you that means this is automatically going to happen. Now, that's not necessarily the case. And I say this in part for the benefit of the commission, as well as the residents, especially as we have several people digitally who aren't traditionally present. During the workshop, there is a request to develop a policy that would allow for regulation in the following manner. But once a policy is developed, you can say, I liked that in the abstract. Seeing it on paper, it's not for me. I don't want to move forward. And so I just want to make that clear, because traditionally when we have ordinances in this community, there tends to be a lot of consensus. Things tend to operate and move forward with an informed discussion of the issues, but the supposition that this is ultimately going to be adopted in some form. And that doesn't necessarily need to be the case when an ordinance is presented, which is in part why Greg presented you those sort of those options. Because we are reading this, and this has been announced as first reading, I would suggest that if you decide that you want to move forward, but discuss it at another time procedurally, I would suggest that you move to table the discussion of this ordinance on first reading to another date, if and when we get there. And of course, we can, revisit what that would look like procedurally. If the consensus is not to, that's pretty easy to say, it died for lack of consensus or desire. But I just wanted to address those little procedural elements. Otherwise, I think Greg aptly noted the extensive conversation. I know a lot of people are here to discuss it, so I turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Would the commission like to ask some questions at this time, or would you like to go out to the public first? Okay.
Question for Greg. Obviously, when 1, 2. I wasn't broadcasting. The question that I have is, since we've been down this road and we've looked at the iterations of it, one thing was very heavily played in this issue was COVID. And when cities and bars and malls, everything was shut down, we saw a tremendous amount of people coming to our beaches. Since that time, and since putting these signs in place, could you give us your feeling on how the signs have been working, and if they've been effective?
Yeah, I think, to answer your question, it's been a pretty extensive process from 2014 to get to where we are as far as no parking zones. And we did that real systematically. There was a lot of the first blocks off Gulf Boulevard, those are kind of no-brainers. We knew we needed to restrict those. And then as time has gone along, we've gone further back. I live on Bay Boulevard, for example. We've gone further, some of the feeder streets to Gulf Boulevard, like 22nd, we've gone further back to Gulf Boulevard. And I think I said this in the work session, is that it is a fact that what we experienced back in the early spring when we had the onslaught of visitors, and those folks had every right, let me just say this as your manager and as a president, somebody who lives in Florida, those folks had every right to come to this beach like anybody else does. But the fact of the matter is that even the software, if you recall, the sheriffs implemented a link where you could click on, and they had information for every beach access on Gulf Boulevard. That's pretty amazing thing. They had a deputy at every access, not just ours, all of them, where you could click on and you could try to figure out what beach you could get to if you were coming to Pinellas County. And I forgot what I won't get the percentage exactly right, but it was high. It was like 70% on peak days, like Fridays and Saturdays, because the software, they could tell who was hitting their site. The 70 to 80% were all Hillsborough County, Polk County, in that part of the world. And you're exactly right. What we found out from looking at information like that, looking at car tags and just checking things out, is that there was nothing else to do. So if you had a couple that woke up Saturday morning when everything shut down, and they're like everybody else, they're going stir crazy. They want to get out of the house. What can we do? You can't go to Busch Gardens, can't do this, can't do that. They all got in their car and they came to Pinellas County. And so all the beach cities dealt with what we dealt with. So I would just say, as your manager and somebody that lives here and somebody that that lives and breathes this stuff all the time, that hopefully, the COVID deal and what it did to us back in the spring is I hope a once in a lifetime thing for me. But at least maybe a decade, or we'll get some period of time at it. But so yeah, that definitely drove that, was a driving force behind that. Because the more I consider 4th of July and Labor Day now to be routine versus what we dealt with. So with the effort that we put in through from 2014 to date. Somebody asked me this today. I really feel like that we've gotten our hands around 99.9% of the parking problems that we had. But that's my answer to your question.
But the signs have been working since we got past the COVID now.
Yeah, and I'll say, but just all the, putting all our cards on the table, they have worked, and we, for example, we put signs up on First Street from 16th all the way to 28th, right before holidays run together. I think it was right before July 4th. It was right before July 4th, and that really shut down a lot of the complaints we were having because, people are trying to park as close as they can to go to the beach. And First Street was really the last main street where we didn't have a lot of signs up. So that did help, but to be completely transparent about it, after the holiday, the beach traffic has dropped way off. We have a representative from Travis, and I think he'll tell you that the traffic's not what it was back in the spring when nothing else was open. So it's kind of hard to compare right now the additional signs in the future, but I still believe that what we have in place addresses the majority of the issues that we have.
Thank you, Phil. Yes.
I just want to say, as far as COVID-19, this year is in no way respective of what our parking conditions have been over the last 5 or 6 years. Every year has gotten continually worse. And I do have to say that the signs have helped some. But if you went back to season and spring break, the year before COVID came, we were massively affected by congested streets and parking in our residential neighborhoods. COVID is a whole nother story, and locking down the beach and then having people come, that was an extraordinary, I hope never event again. But when we look back at our parking situation, and I think, Greg, you mentioned that 50% of our signage on the east side of Gulf Boulevard now is no parking. But with the other 50% less, and in season, we can expect cars to be tooling around and cruising for parking places and going in and out of each side street from 5th to 28th and back on Gulf Boulevard and looking for parking places in our residential neighborhoods. So as much as I think the signage has helped some, and COVID should play nothing in as far as the parking, because it's a totally extreme comparison to what our parking was like before 2020, from 2014 on to 2019, when we see more people moving here from the other areas. They're living outside the beach area, coming to our area because of our publications of free parking in our city. And that has created, extreme situations in some of our residential areas. So on that note, I'm going to listen to the public.
Ed, do you have anything you'd like to say at this time?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Commissioner McCall, would you like to make a statement at this time, or would you like to wait until we go out to the public?
I'll wait for public comment, please.
Thank you. With that, Matt, is there anyone that is on Zoom who would like to speak at this time?
Madam Mayor, I don't see any active participants. Actually, I have two. But first, before we address the hands that are up, I have two.
Okay.
I'm going to address the comments that were written in the chat window in the beginning of the meeting. With regard to parking, we are not Bel Air. This is from Heather McCarty. With regard to parking, we're not Bel Air, and we don't want to be Bel Air. We can't allow a few to dictate for the rest. We live on East Gulf and have no problems with street parking. The vast majority of visitors are extremely respectful. The only thing accomplished by this is to punish residents that occasionally need to park on the street for various reasons. It continues to say, in many places, it would hamper even the small restaurants, which we all love. Then we had a follow-up comment from Stuart DeVore. I agree. If anything, let's let this be tabled until next year. We have enough going on trying to get through this time. I'm all about supporting our local businesses. Now I have 3 hands in the air. I'm going to address them in order. I'd like to address Maria Heshmati. Please go ahead and unmute yourself at this time.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Maria.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Maria Heshmati, 315 La Hacienda Drive. I would really like to see some more rules and regulations in our beautiful IRB, and therefore I'm supporting the parking with permits only for the residents in our residential areas. The beachgoers already taking over and parking on the fingers and blocking our mailboxes and disturbing our peace and safety. And therefore, with that said, I want to thank you all, commissioners and the city manager.
Thank you, Maria. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to address also, I forgot the gentleman's name, but there's a Mary Home Folder. That's your username. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself at this time, please.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. Hi, Cookie. Lee Wilkerson.
Hi, Lee. Are you on your wife's account?
I am.
But yes, speak. Your
Okay.
turn.
I think there's a lot of consensus on what the issue is with parking and overparking, and we understand the seasonality of it. And I really feel like we could be lulled into a sense of complacency at this time of year that, oh, it's not going to be a problem. But, you know, when our average home value in our town is over 500,000 and we're just allowing a lot of free parking and kind of attracting sort of folks who really are only becoming because it is free. Yes, they love our town, it's charming and so on, but that's not the reason. And they want to come to the beach, and you know, the beach is public, and we are providing a significant amount of public access and a lot of, you know, commercial enterprises that would allow people to have public access. So I think the point of view is very different depending on where you live. If you live around 8th Avenue and 1st Street or East Gulf Boulevard, there's no way you're not for this ordinance. If you live on Harbor Drive South and you don't drive down in Gulf Boulevard on the weekends, then you may not really realize that what a problem it is. So I understand there's going to be a lot of different points of view on this, but we need to go with the resident decal ordinance. It's very important to the integrity and authenticity of our city that we're not just become a totally auto-centric, every inch loaded up with automobiles like Manhattan. No one likes that. We want to stay more of a small town atmosphere and stay, you know, resident oriented, especially on the east of Gulf Boulevard. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lee.
Madam Mayor, I have 2 more speakers, but after that, I also have some more chat that I need to read as well. I would like to address Ira Heshmati at this time, please. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Is that Ira?
Yes.
Hi, Ira. Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Ira. Yes, please state your name and your address.
Hello, everyone. Ira Heshmati, 315 La Hacienda. Indian Rock Beach is getting very popular among the visitors and beachgoers. Therefore, I mean, every year that goes, we get busier and busier, and it really affecting us, affecting our beaches, affecting our playgrounds, affecting our ports, and most definitely affecting our street parking. And that's something that we really have to do something about it sooner than later. And we have to do something for as a long term, not just the short term. We have to look at the future and do something that help us in the future as well. Therefore, for sure, I think we should have to have the permit for residents only, at least for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 8 to 5 p.m. And I'm definitely for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ira.
Next, I'd like to recognize Jay Newt.
Hi, Jay.
Hi. Well, it's not Jay Newt. It's Linda Newton.
Oh, hi, Linda.
Hi. We're out of town, but we're on board here with you guys. 438 Harbor Drive North. We feel at this point that this would very much impair the way we live and what we do in Indian Rocks Beach. We moved to Indian Rocks Beach over 17 years ago, and we didn't invest in Bel Air because we didn't like all the rules. We have family, we have friends, we have boating activities constantly, and it's not after 5 o'clock. I'm sorry. It would very much hurt the way we live and what we do. I feel for the people that are more affected by the beachgoers, but out on Harbor Drive North, we're not. And I feel that this would be taking a lot of our rights away. We would have to be trying to plan who needs to buy a permit, and it would be an added expense and quite a bit of expense, because I have quite a few people that will go boating with us, and also our son and all of his friends. And we have afternoon parties, and we have a wonderful time at Indian Rocks Beach. So I don't feel that this ordinance is fair to be saying that if somebody parks wrong, it's a $75 event, or everybody has to buy a $5 parking permit to come out and spend the day with us. So I don't understand, because we are not out there on Harbor Drive North or South affected by all of the beachgoers.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
John Thayer, will you please unmute yourself?
John?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
John Thayer, 1819 Bay Boulevard, IRB. And I also live on Bay Boulevard and can see the beach from my house, but I haven't been able to see all these cars. Starting after the meeting, the workshop in July, every single weekend at 1 or 2 o'clock on a sun, when it's sunny, I drove all of Indian Rocks. Also drove all of Bel Air Beach one time, just to see the difference in the communities. The only problems, and they're very few, since the signage has been put up, are around the corner of 9th and East, but a lot of those are resident cars. Half of them have stickers on them. A little spot down in Bay Boulevard between 22nd, 23rd, and a little bit on 12th, but the first block of 12th, most of those cars have stickers on them, because you can go there now and see them parked there. So I understand where we're coming from, but this parking ordinance affects the whole city, but it's a parking ordinance for the beach goers. If you look at it, call it what it is. You have 9 whereases. Whereas number 1 says transient guests who visit the beaches. Whereas number 2, motor vehicles to gain access to the beaches. Whereas number 4, beachgoers' vehicles. All right. Whereas number 8, parking close to proximity of beaches. This problem is between Gulf and East and Gulf and 2nd to the north. You're talking about 2 blocks, but we are hurting all the rest of the residents who have older homes, 1 or 2 car driveways. We're going to be shuffling cars, or else we're going to be parking up in the grass. We may have to park in the grass, because part of this ordinance says you can park a golf cart on the street, but not your car without a sticker. The other thing I would point out is you're talking 2,500 stickers. Now you're going to issue them once a year instead of twice a year. When you do this, every resident is going to register every vehicle they own, whether it's a low-speed vehicle, a motorcycle, 3 cars, 4 cars. So you could be talking close to 10,000 stickers you're going to issue once a year. Okay? Probably worst case, but at least 5,000 or 7,000. Are we ready for that? It's going to be an administrative nightmare. It's going to be an enforcement nightmare, because right now you can look up and down first, and if there's anybody parked there, you can go write them a ticket. Once you make stickers, you got to check every car. And it's not like the beach. They're not parked face in. They could be butted up against each other. You have to get out of your vehicle and look for one on their bumper between somebody else's bumper. Thirdly, it's going to be a black market like you wouldn't believe, because people will be getting all these stickers and they don't need them for their motorcycles and their 3rd car.
John, can you wrap it up? Your 3 minutes is up.
Okay. They'll be giving them to their friends. So these are special times. The signs are working. I agree that we should table this till at least after next summer and see how it goes next year. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Matt, any more?
Madam Mayor, just a few more comments to read aloud.
Sure.
From Heather McCarty, we walk the fingers with our dog regularly. The vast majority of parking on the fingers are residents, not beach visitors. Jim Sampe, 434 Harbor Drive North. Good point by Commission and Management about pandemic anomaly. That was a significant issue, spot on. Adhere to enforce existing challenges with current no parking designated areas. Don't penalize or harm. Sorry, I lost my place. Don't penalize or harm your existing residents from controlling legitimate friends and family visitation. Also explore other commercial parking options for tourists. From Karen to everyone, agreed this issue should be tabled until next year. Mike Fowler, 102 Markdale Boulevard, IRB. I believe, from Christine Bergman, I believe we need to stay and open beach access should be free to visitors and guests. The current parking limits are sufficient. Karen, I agree with Christine. I think we're making an issue when there isn't one. Surveyor, 219 Bahia Vista Boulevard. Thanks to all considering the parking restriction. In front of my home, it's always parked each weekend, and this was pre-COVID as well. Please do move forward. Let's see here. With looking into this, just as Iris said, perhaps we need to do this on weekends and holidays. Thanks. And I see more agreement from Scott Holmes. This is not like Bel Air. Great point, Jim Sampe. Don't penalize or harm existing residents. Many of us, due to COVID, have had more family having to stay with us. This family may have had a vehicle. I agree, parking options for others, non-residents and tourists, should be instead considered. Mike Fowler, 102 Markdale Boulevard. As a resident and business owner, I can easily see both sides of the decision. Having said that, I think we can all agree this is the most unsettling time that most of us have ever been through. Therefore, it would be my opinion that we table this difficult decision. We're in slow season, so the urgency is settled and the issue can wait for more stable times. Thank you, Mike Fowler. If this were to go into effect, would you want to have your guests to park in your lawns? Agreed with Mike Fowler, 410 20th Ave IRB. That was Stuart DeVore. From Kelly Ciceric, Harbor Drive South, would benefit from a no parking here to corner sign on even side from 400 address to Maxwell Place. This will allow access for emergency vehicles. Now parking is on both sides and often blocked. And that concludes the list. But I do have a David Ardman that would like to speak. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Hi, David.
Hello and good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, everyone. This is a great discussion, some good feedback on all sides, and it's very, very healthy. I agree with the comments that, you know, there are locations in Indian Rocks Beach. And by the way, I'm at 351 La Hacienda Drive. There are locations, you know, which may, you know, become more impacted than others. La Hacienda abuts on East Gulf, as you know. And, you know, I think the 7th, 8th, and 9th Avenues do experience a little bit more activity, you know, just based upon the fact that, you know, you got a place that serves good food and homemade ice cream and has bathrooms, you know, on the 8th Avenue access. And so that's a desirable spot, you know, to access the beach. And as a result, East Gulf does get, you know, more cars than some of these other areas that other folks are pointing to. The only other comment that I have, and I'm putting on my fire commissioner hat. You know, I'm always concerned about being able to have the district respond in a timely manner to people that need us. And I believe the fire chief has communicated with the city manager with regard to concerns of specific areas that we have as a district in terms of turning radiuses and ingress and egress of our frontline apparatus equipment. So again, this is a good, healthy discussion, and I've enjoyed listening to it, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to it.
Thank you, David. Matt, are there any more?
One last one from Kristen Sturts. Residents should realize that the premium we get from the outside visitors are great business at our community doorsteps that would not survive without outsider sponsorship. If we want to become a business desert like Bel Air, let's move there. Businesses in IRB are a much more fragile situation than most people realize. This should be shelved for the foreseeable future. That concludes the listing of comments.
Thank you, Matt. At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing to the auditorium. If anyone would like to come forward, please state your name and your address. Hi, Don. You have 3 minutes.
I knew that.
I know
Don
you.
House,
I know you.
2104 Beach Trail. So Diane made a good point that it's gotten worse over the last few years. And it really started from a very simple thing. They started charging for parking at Ben T. Davis Beach and Courtney Camel Causeway. So we get if it's free, it's for me beachgoers. You can tell that by the Walmart bags that are left on the beach, okay? So if that's what you want to track, just let them park wherever you want. But here's an interesting thing, guys, okay? The beach accesses, the reason we got sand was we provided parking to the public on our beach accesses. Now, all those parks have public parking that is not reserved for the beach. If we don't get sand, jerk it all down and save it all for IRB residents. That's a good idea.
Thank you, Don. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Hello, Mayor.
Hi, Andy.
Adam McLean, 339 Bahia Vista, also a business owner. I agree 1,000% with City Manager, Mr. Mims. The businesses will not survive if we enforce that. We rely so much on tourism, it's ridiculous. And what you got to do really is put yourself in another city. If St. Pete says, hey, we don't want any Rocks Beach residents to come to our Rays game, don't park here, stay out. You know, most people move to Indian Rocks Beach because of the non-pretentious environment that it has. And I agree again with the city manager. COVID has done so much and affected so much. It's all going to get back to the way it was before, but that's why we love it, because there aren't all these rules, like Linda Newton said, and so many others. So I think it's a horrible mistake to enforce it, to have restricted parking. The businesses need it. And if residents don't like people near them, move to Costa Rica. There is plenty of parking there. So I have nothing further.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, Polly.
Hi, how are you?
I'm
Paul
good.
Jenkins, Krabby Bills. Overall, I think you probably understand where we're looking at this with. We're a business. We're separated, whereas we're down in the triangle, the business triangle. But we mentioned earlier Red Lion, and I'm not certain if their new ownership is here right now or not, but they're very pedestrian, and in my younger days, I used to go there quite frequently, and you would park either in back or you'd park on the streets to go there. So that is an issue, and I understand the residents. I understand that the issue is an issue to deal with, and I'm saying comprehensively, we should probably look at this and discuss other solutions with parking. Someone mentioned having one side of the street where there was no parking on one side of the street. All of the locations that we discuss having paid parking, they also have other business, they have other, whether it be free beach rides, things like that, to where you can actually have paid parking garages that actually give people the opportunity to park and still take on, partake in the amenities that Indian Rocks Beach has to offer. So I think we have to look at it comprehensively, and that's all I'm mentioning is we have locations that are closed right now. It's been a struggle for us, and we have more parking there than anyone else in Indian Rocks Beach at Krabby Bills. We have empty parking spaces right now, and we could say that, the COVID part was an anomaly that we had so many people here, but I do know and I agree that we have had a lot of people parking here for years, and it's it's a very nuanced situation that probably just to say, let's create an ordinance, maybe that'll be a solution. But as far as opening up businesses right now, considering we don't have, I don't see that place opening up and staying open with new business regulations coming down the pike here in the next couple of years. It's not very friendly from a business standpoint. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, John.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Long time no see.
I know, we have not seen you for a while.
John Fansteel, 448 Harbor Drive South. I want to thank the city for sending out the postcards. I think this is just a great idea to inform residents about ordinances when they're coming up, and I hope that continues. All the residents I've talked to on Harbor Drive North and Harbor Drive South, with the exception of somebody who's really close to me, who was just quoted a little while ago, are against the parking ban. Phil, I believe in a previous meeting, said he was for it. Phil's at the beginning of Harbor Drive South, and there's a lot of short-term rentals nearby. In fact, right across the street, the house that our former vice mayor had, Nick Palumba, Nick sold that to a short-term rental. So there's another one in there now. So I can understand in certain areas of the city, perhaps at the beginning of South Harbor Drive, there may be a reason why the residents want a parking ban, and that's terrific. I think this is just not a one-size-fits-all. North Harbor Drive in general, South Harbor Drive does not have a problem with beach parking. And you are taking away, by doing this, it's almost laziness, just doing it all of everything east of Gulf Boulevard. You should talk to the people in North Harbor Drive, South Harbor Drive, 20th Avenue. Maybe La Hacienda has a majority that wants it, I don't know. But you are taking away property rights. And I can tell you there are people already in North Harbor Drive and South Harbor Drive that are talking about legal action if these rights are taken away from them. So they're pretty serious about it. It's just wrong to take away residents' rights when there's no need, and there's no need to do it in most of North Harbor and South Harbor Drive. So I hope you take that into consideration, and thank you.
Thank you, John. Carol?
Carol McLaughlin, 115 21st Avenue. First of all, I would like to thank the commission for all the work that you've done regarding parking in Indian Rocks Beach. I've lived on 21st Avenue for the last 47 years, and believe me, we've seen some changes in parking, in the people who are coming to the beach, and in some cases abusing the beach and the right to park in our community. But I have a question. Along First Street, we put up no parking anytime signs. With the ordinance that we're talking about, do those signs continue to stay there, or are you going to adjust the signage or adjust where those signs are? Or it has worked on First Street.
Okay. Carol, he'll address it after we
Okay,
get all the,
all right.
that's okay with you.
But we would appreciate it, those of us who live on First Street especially, if we could keep the no parking anytime signs. It has worked. It's made a difference in our lives.
Thank you, Carol. Hi.
I'm Carol Sampe, 434 Harbor Drive North. I'm another one of the Harbor Drive North and South crowd that is very much against this ordinance passing. We have 3 kids that are all teenage, well, actually they're almost in their 20s now, but with lots of friends over. When we have daytime parties, we always make sure that the cars are parked on one side of the street only, so that there is egress and, so that the fire trucks or whatever emergency vehicles can get through. I know that they have problems in other parts of the city, but that doesn't mean that we should be impacted by what they're doing. The city manager has said that the current no parking signs has solved 99.9% of the parking problems. Let's stick with that. you said that this is a city parking issue. It's not a city parking issue. It's First, Second Street. It's certain sections of the city that it's a parking issue, not the entire parking issue. So I would request that you, at minimum, table it, if not, vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Hi, Bob.
Hello. Bob Linderman, 455 20th Avenue. So this has been first of all, I commend the commission for taking this on. To me, this is one of the most important issues that we have in Indian Rocks Beach because of the fact that it's not only a safety issue, which is a huge safety issue, getting trucks and other people up and down there, and the amount of traffic that we have, both golf carts and walking and bicycles working their way around. I've seen several, thank you. I've seen several close calls where people are looking for parking spaces, not really paying attention to what they're doing, and coming close to running people over. It's great. You put the parking signs. All that's doing is pushing these people further and further back into our neighborhoods. Where it used to be, just around First Avenue, it's now north of Bay on 20th where people are parked. And so these are people who also, I believe, are not necessarily spending a lot of money on our beaches. They're people coming over from other communities that bring wagons full of stuff, including food, chairs, anything you can think of. They take it across the beach. These are not people that are spending a lot of money in our businesses here in Indian Rocks Beach. So this is a huge issue to me. I mean, parking was actually the thing that drove my wife and I off the beach after 15 years because we just couldn't take the constant circling around on 8th behind Kooky Coconuts. It just ruined the experience for us. And people are not particularly happy when they can't get a parking space. So they're fairly rude. We've also seen some of that with people that are looking for parking inside the thing. So I commend you guys for taking it on. I don't think it should be tabled. I'm happy for the people who are out on way out on North and South Harbor Drive who don't have this problem. But I'm seeing it creep up 20th continually, and it continues to get worse. And I think we really do need to address it. And I think that restricting the parking needs to be seriously looked at. Maybe we modify some of the things, but I'm in favor of having some sort of identifier that allows you to park during the day. And then of course in the evening, I think the way the ordinance is written, in the evening, we don't have any problem. And that's also when at least our restaurants and many of our communities. As far as the rentals go, I'm sorry. As a business owner myself, someone who's been in business, you have to figure that out for your business. If you have people that are coming in and you have a short-term rental, then you need to figure out how you're also going to park those people off the street so they don't become a problem. So thank you again for taking this on and listening to my point of view.
Thank you, Bob. Hi, Linda.
Good evening, Commission. Good evening, Mayor. Linda Delina, 1201 Bay Palm Boulevard. Well, 12th Avenue, hotspot for beach parking. Not only does it create a problem for anyone who wants to go to the beach from back 12th, we do have on 12th just one side that allows parking. But the vehicle traffic on 12th, a lot of big trucks, a lot of big vehicles. There's a lot of people that bike in our community, a lot of children on bicycles. That's why we moved to the beaches, to enjoy the weather, the beach, the environment. We have playgrounds. The city already provides a public parking lot. The city already provides free parking spaces at our beach accesses. This is only a town of 28 streets. When you encourage more and more beach traffic because they can't park in Clearwater, it's too expensive. They can't park in Indian Shores because there's no parking except a paid parking lot. They're coming to our beaches. What we see on 12th Avenue is not people who are spending the entire day and then going for dinner at some of our lovely restaurants. They're families, they're young people with coolers. They're parking all the way back to Bay Palm Boulevard. I can also tell you that some of the residents that are parking on the street on 12th Avenue, they're parking there probably to keep beach people from parking in front of their house. I know that because I watch those vehicles all the time whose driveways are empty, but their vehicles parked on the street, and there's a reason for that. We owe it to our residents, we owe it to our children, we owe it to the people who rent here to provide safe streets and a safe environment. And I think we need to do something with this ordinance. The decals is a great way to start. It's not prohibiting families who live here from parking their vehicles here. It's only till 5 o'clock. So you'll have to adjust your lifestyle, just as though we've had to adjust ours to deal with the beach parking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca Segra, 368 La Hacienda Drive. I just want a little clarification because I've heard a lot of people saying that they don't like the idea of the restrictions. But from what I understand, there really aren't any restrictions for the residents. If you have a sticker, you can park anywhere in Indian Rocks Beach in front of your house or any place else that allows parking. At least that's how I thought this ordinance was going to be done. So that residents could literally park on the street if they had guests, and then their guests could park in their driveway without a sticker. I'd like to make sure that that is what I expected or what I've heard that this ordinance is about. So it doesn't restrict the residents. They can park anywhere. Please address that when you have a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hi, Tammy.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Tammy McCutcheon, MCC-UTCHAN. I live at 201 7th Avenue. I started a parking on one side street petition. We've lived here in Indian Rocks Beach since 1987. We love our small community and we love how we stick together. About the parking situation, there are two important issues that should matter. One, making sure the emergency vehicles, I'm gonna take this off, sorry. One is making sure that the emergency vehicles can get through all the streets. Two, making sure our small businesses will not be affected by this decision. There are some of you with small businesses. If you lived in the area where you want no parking from 9 to 5 and you didn't have enough parking, would this ordinance hurt your business? Our small businesses is what makes our community. This decision will hurt the small businesses' revenue. Trying to fix one situation will hurt another situation. One side street parking only should help the street parking. Maybe we can put up the parking meters for one side street parking. This will disrupt the residents' livelihood from family and friends gatherings, which we all have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tammy. Hi.
Pete Delena, 1201 Bay Palm Boulevard, Indian Rocks Beach. Well, I don't think that anyone really wants to be over-administered or over-regulated, but when issues arise like we have here with parking, it becomes a necessity to make some alterations. And I think that the way it is now, it's a cluster on a lot of the streets where you can't drive your car without pulling over to the side and waiting for cars to pass, or if you're on your bike, you have to be very careful. You have to ride in the gutter so that you don't get hit by a car. So something needs to be done, I think, and it's as a result of our just having an attractive resource, and that's the beach. And if the beach wasn't here, maybe we wouldn't be having this discussion. But since it is, I think we need to make some changes to the way we do things so that it's safer and it's easier for emergency vehicles to not be inhibited, and just for our daily passing of going back and forth from the grocery store to our house. So, thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Hi, Joanna.
I'm Joanne Mujado, 340 12th Avenue. I sent all of you a letter, a rather lengthy letter, so I'm not going to go through all of that, but I would have to agree with the city manager that I would like to see this tabled. I don't believe any of these proposals are an answer to what is going on, that we need a lot more time to talk about it and find some other answers. So I'd like to see it taken off the table at this time.
Thank you, Joan. Hi, Ann.
Ann Todia, 919 Harbor House Drive. As always, I'd like to thank and support the commissioner and the city manager's team for their time and energy spent in researching, visiting with, and listening to citizens and developing these proposed ordinances. As I was riding my bike through the streets, two words came to my mind: balance and enforcement. I don't think we can look at this past year as a typical year. But if you go back to the last 15 years, during our extra busy times and seasons, without any kind of street parking ordinance, we've kind of lost control of our streets. Larger and larger numbers of non-resident vacationers and beachgoers come to Indian Rocks Beach, parking anywhere they can find a spot or an imagined spot. This haphazard approach increases accidents, mishaps, property damage, trash, and lawlessness. It puts joggers, walkers, and bikers at a greater risk. Decals do not suggest excluding non-residents from visiting IRB. We provide many specific designated parking areas. Please put some balance back. A balance where Indian Rocks Beach residents can enjoy our city again without fighting for space to walk, run, bike, or even park. A decal system is already in place. Currently, it gives those who don't live on the beach a designated place to park at the beach accesses. This ordinance will expand the places where a decal will be in effect. If you park on the street in front of your house, you'll still be able to park on the street in front of your house. All you need to do is pick up your free decal and attach it to your car. However, without enforcement, as Greg was speaking to, nothing will change. Without law enforcement and code enforcement officials levying fines, there will be no point in putting a new procedure in place. It's just a waste of our resources. There must be a commitment to stand behind these ordinances with enforcement. It may be difficult for the first cycle or the first season, which we hope we'll see again soon. But once the word gets out, we here in Indian Rocks Beach welcome the non-residents, but not with an open invitation to show disregard for our small town beach paradise.
Thank you, Ann. Hi.
Good evening. I'd like to start out to say that we started a petition and we have over 170 signatures. I think you all have gotten a copy. And It's tough to ask for no parking. Like other people have said, we have parties, families, and they park on the street all the time. If they're gonna put no parking out there, everybody's definitely gonna be changing their lifestyle. We just don't agree with it. I know other people have their opinions, but that's our opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Could you state your name and address?
201 7th Avenue, Dana McCutcheon.
Dana. Hi, John.
All right, just a sound check. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. First, appreciate all the due diligence, tremendous amount of work that the city, the commissioners, everybody's put into this. This is not an easy problem to fix. But as I look and listen and read and think through it, from my perspective, there is validity and value to a permit parking solution. I say that because of three reasons. Number one, it supports safety. I'm not going to say anything that hasn't been already said tonight, whether it's pedestrians, whether it's kids, it's people on bicycles, whether it's the workers that support our community. Safety is key. Number two is the reason that we moved to this community, and that's the small town feeling. And preserving and maintaining that is key. And the last piece, and heaven forbid we ever need it, but is the accessibility of emergency vehicles at any unknown point in time. The reality is there is no perfect solution, but I appreciate all the effort that's gone into this to reach the best fit. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sir,
John.
could you state your name and address for the record?
John, your name and your
Oh, I
address.
apologize. My name is John Ashby, 513 Hidden Harbor Drive, IRB.
Thank you.
Bet.
Anyone else who'd like to come forward? Hi, Phil.
Phil Roble, 113 or 112 13th Avenue. A lot of great comments. I agree with a lot of the pros and cons, 12th Avenue. It's a speedway.
Yeah.
I live on the next speedway over, 13th, because it's very important when you're back on 12th, 14th, all the way back there, that when a commercial comes on, you can get to the store and back before the commercial breaks over. So I live on a street that's 550 feet long, and cars will get up to 35, 40 miles an hour. So I think what we need more than anything is just enforcement of what we have now. I mean, I'm one that pushed for parking on one side of the street heavily. And as I remember when we had the workshop back a while ago at night, the majority of the people at that workshop wanted one side of the street parking. And that I think could work with enforcement. It would help on the speed, but enforcement. I mean, unfortunately, that's what it comes down to, and you have to just stay on top of it. But I think having parking on one side of the streets from 9 to 5, especially on the weekends, is crazy, because the businesses need the parking, especially where I live. 13th, 14th, 15th, that's a business district. And we all know that nobody has a large parking space or a large parking lot. And people have to park somewhere, because a lot of these businesses could not survive just on what we all spend there. You have to have in certain areas. I can see where there's some areas where you could do no parking, where there's nobody there that needs to park for a business or anything. When I moved here in the early 90s and I started working up here, when I went to work, people say, "Oh, where are you living?" I'd say Indian Rocks Beach. They say, "Oh, you're so lucky. We live on the other side of Bridge, and we always go to the north end of town. We park. We go to Cafe Paris. We go to Taipan Alley, Sandy's." They love the Phoenix Market because they can go from the beach to the Phoenix Market, which is gone now. But they did go to our businesses. They did want to spend money here. And it's just, I mean, hanging out in IRB for people over there is a privilege. And I think taking away the free parking on a lot of the areas would take that privilege away from them and our businesses. So I think we definitely need to be who we are. Don't try to change where you came to live If you really want to change this place that bad and have no parking and not let people come over here, I think you bought one town too far south down Gulf Boulevard. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Phil. Anyone else who'd like to come forward? 1 second, anyone else like to come forward that's in the audience tonight? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, but I'm going to have Matt.
Yes, hi, I'd like to go ahead and address Bill Sheridan, 470 Harbor Drive. Please go ahead and unmute yourself at this time.
Hi, Bill. Bill, can you unmute yourself?
Sorry, I have 3 screens. I had to get to the right one. Bill Sheridan, 470 Harbor Drive North. I actually put it in the chat because I didn't know if you're going to call back on me, but just agree with a lot of the points on both sides of this tonight. But I do want to make sure that, this sounds like we have a very surgical issue. Like John said, we're trying to address beach access, beach issues, and this ordinance in its current form is very broad reaching, impacts the whole city, and doesn't really go at trying to fix the specific problem. Enforcement, I think, is a huge piece of it. We've heard that a lot today. It's about proximity to the beach. It's about taking care of our small businesses. All the same points that everybody made. So on Harbor Drive North, we don't have this issue. Emergency vehicles can get through, and just would not like to see some of the things that other towns have done to their residents happen here in Indian Rocks Beach. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Matt, any more?
Madam Mayor, I had a Chin Ma. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute your microphone at this time, you're addressed.
Hi, Chin. Can you unmute?
I have Chin Ma, 1206 Gulf Boulevard. I agree that we need to look at limiting parking for people going to the beach as it is. The city already provides a lot of parking at the beach accesses, as well as city parking lot. A large number of the people that don't patronize our businesses, because I see a lot of them with their coolers, et cetera. Thank you, Chin Ma. And I do have some additional chats if you'd like me to read them. Otherwise, they'll become a permanent part of the record.
I'd like you to read them.
Okay. Okay, so I apologize. I'm fighting with the scrolling here. Okay, so from Myra Trudel, 2504 Gulf Boulevard, unit number 503. Please table this. I live in a 40-unit condo with 9 guest parking spots. At times, our guests have no place to park. Please do not charge my personal guests and family to pay to visit me. From Karen to everyone, I also live on 12th Street. The big vehicles are the contractors who are building the homes at the end. And I disagree that residents are parked in the street to keep the driveway clear. I walk it daily and watch as more become rentals and are typically contractors. Catherine Keeney, 2206 Beach Trail, regarding permit parking on the beach access. Dear City Commission, please do not ban overnight beach access parking. The parking use is very low from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Little maintenance is required during that time. And the residents located in this area have no street parking. The beaches and businesses are closed. And the demand issue as those on the east side, and yet overnight parking is not being banned. Paula Sheminsky, 109 11th Ave. If we can just enforce the no parking signs, we're still going to have issues with people parking both sides of the streets. The police need to enforce illegal parking and ticket them. This is an ongoing problem in our street. Thank you. I see another agreement with Catherine. From Scott Holmes, has the city considered commandeering the right-of-ways? This could be used to widen the road and or add parking, even paid parking. There's about 10 feet on each side of almost every street in IRB that is owned by the city. Thanks for the comments, John. From Karen, one-side street parking and/or speed humps would be great. We're out there at 6:45 a.m. and the contractors are moving us over to get to the site by 7 a.m. And that concludes the list of chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We'll close the public hearing on both sides here. And with that, I think we'll go, Greg, if you'd like to answer some of the questions that have been asked tonight.
Yeah. Early on, there was a comment about what cycle the issuance of decals will be, and we'll get even more into that on the next ordinance. But my plan is to keep it on a 2-year cycle. Administratively, whether you adopt this ordinance or not, it's an administrative nightmare to have to reissue decals to residents every year. So we plan to stay on a 2-year cycle. Somebody referenced the fire chief earlier. The fire chief has sent me an email with some requests that I told him I would consider after the commission decided what direction you're going with the ordinance. He specifically is concerned about on-street parking at the end of cul-de-sacs where their fire trucks may have trouble, making the turn, the radius, somebody's parked there. As far as enforcement, let there be no mistake. Like other ordinances, there's always going to be people on occasion that violate ordinances, but particularly this year with enhanced help from the sheriff's office, from our full-time code enforcement person, and part of the new budget, I just hired a part-time code enforcement person. We've written hundreds of tickets so that it's actively being enforced. So if people are going to violate it, absolutely. What happens to the existing no parking signs, to be honest with you, if the ordinance goes forward before we implement it, that's something that I'll sit down with staff and we'll look at where we have signs and what needs to stay and what we're going to leave. So we haven't determined that. And one thing I really want to clear up is that when I first started making my comments, for the sake of this discussion, I recommended 3 things after y'all have all your discussion and have all the public input, and that is, number 1, decide up front if you want to go forward with the ordinance. If you don't want to go forward with it, just make a motion to not go forward with it, or to go forward with it the way it's written, or go forward with it with amendments. A couple times people have said that I said in the meeting that you should table it. I didn't say that. I said that was one of your options, was to table it. The decision of, the city attorney and I have done what y'all asked us to do. We drafted an ordinance that can be tweaked and modified or whatever. But whether you want to go forward with it at all, whether you want to go with it like it is, if you want to amend it 40 times, that's strictly the decision of the 5 commissioners. And that really, I think, clears up the things that I heard that I want to address.
With that, are there any comments that any of the commissioners would like to make before we decide where we're going to go with to add to the conversation that we've had with the residents? Joe, do you want to make any comments?
Yeah, I would, just in full disclosure, I would like to address, I did have a meeting in relation to the fire commissioner and Fire Chief Burton after our workshop in August. I did request a meeting and sat down with Fire Chief Burton. Since I'm new to the commission, and there's a pretty continuous dialogue about emergency vehicles, and obviously the health and safety of our community is paramount. And Greg had mentioned there's been 230 no parking signs erected. So I kind of wanted to sit down and find out, from that first responder concern, if he could highlight any particular instances or any specifics that could provide some insight. He did get back to me about a week later after he was going to check with his chiefs. He did get back about a week later and could not really find any instances. However, as Greg mentioned, he did say there were a couple 3 tight turns in the area that could be potentially issues for their equipment. But they were more than willing to work, with the city of Indian Rocks Beach for, for no parking signs or to address those issues specifically. And then as David Ardman had mentioned earlier, he did also reach out as far as the largest of their trucks may have a turning radius issue, and that could also be handled with the city. So just wanted to let everybody know I did reach out. I've also reviewed all 12 of the fire department reports over the last 12 months. I did not see any indication or that parking had been an issue over this past year. At least there was nothing in reports. So, I mean, if that is a concern, my personal opinion is the safety of our citizens should be addressed outside of this parking ordinance from a first responder standpoint. Other than that, just my, general comments. Our enforcement, as people brought up a lot in their comments, the sheriff, in my opinion, has done a fantastic job of what we've asked them to do. And my concern is if this commission looks at expanding the enforcement area tenfold, how that's going to benefit us from an enforcement standpoint. I'm not really sure. And just a couple items I would like to address. One, I am a business owner here locally. I have had a retail space here in Indian Rocks Beach approximately 5 years ago. We owned a little deli here in town. There seems to be some comments that, the beachgoers don't spend money here. I can tell you from my own receipts and my own experience, our revenues were threefold on the weekends. That wasn't all local. We love our locals. I honestly met half this town. It's one of the best things I've ever done. But those tourist dollars for those folks that do come here per day do contribute to our city, in my opinion. Just as kind of a parting note, we're all a little on edge this year. I know. We're all, I just ask everybody to kind of keep life in perspective. We all are blessed to live in paradise. And really, the way I look at it is we all were beachgoers to Indian Rocks Beach at some point in time. That's how we ended up here. That's all I have.
Thank you, Joe. Would any of the other commissioners like to speak at this time? Diane?
Cookie, I have some notes that I thought I would discuss. First of all, I know Rebecca asked a question. I don't know if anyone addressed that, but she was asking about this parking ordinance and decals. And yes, any IRB resident who has a decal can park anywhere in the city at their beach accesses, resident spots or other spots, day, evening, night, overnight. There'd be no restrictions. The only restrictions, Rebecca, would be 9 to 5 for anyone that doesn't have a decal. And as you mentioned, then if you were on the street, people could utilize your driveways. And I think prior to COVID-19, our traffic and street parking congestion was very much out of control. It's hard to think back because we've been through a lot, especially this year. But since 2014, we've been proactively through the city putting up no parking signs. But when we were in season and those parking signs were up, it didn't discourage beachgoers rather, cruising our streets and trying to look for parking spots and leaving trash behind and damaging residents' private property and blocking mailboxes and driveways. I mean, that's a reality for most of the people east of Gulf Boulevard. And I know some of the streets aren't nearly affected, like Harbor Drive North and South, and but being seen from East Gulf Boulevard back, and a lot of the cars and the traffic, it's really sad for those residents. There's over 2,000 single-family homes and multifamily homes on the east side of Gulf Boulevard, not including the Fingers. So those are a lot of people that are affected with people driving and trying to get parking spots. And the quality of life is affected. And from a health and safety standpoint, I think it is important to look over those different things. And John said it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and I had written that down because it's really not. But how do we handle the onslaught of the congested streets? Our small town, we have 2.5 miles of road, and when season is in and people are coming here day and trying to get to the beaches, it can be pretty overwhelming. And a lot of them come, drop off all their equipment and coolers and for the day at the beach access, then they go back and start trolling for a spot. And I've watched it and I know it's there. This year, we can't compare what the parking is like. But we do provide public parking and welcome all our daily visitors. We've got beach accesses and public parking, and our downtown district, which is not included in the decal program whatsoever. I don't know if there's going to be a perfect plan, but I think we should look into some options for the people that are struggling in a lot of these streets. Bob Linderman mentioned people are working their way down the Fingers now to park, and they'll continue to do that when season comes. They will. And we've seen it on La Hacienda. We've gotten complaints with people's mailbox and driveways being blocked. And that's pretty far down. People are willing to walk that distance to get their free parking spot. This is not a unique problem to Indian Rocks Beach. You know, a lot of tourist and coastal communities are having this problem. For instance, Holmes Beach, which is part of Anna Maria Island, they have suffered from this onslaught of parking and destruction to some of their personal properties and homeowners' places. And they've passed a parking decal restrictions just in July because they had been going through the same throes that we have heard through the years. I mean, this is not the first time that we've heard about all the problems. I understand not wanting to give up some of our parking privileges. I don't necessarily want to give up my parking privileges, but I know we should at least consider all the options, and if there are any options to make this a little more palatable for everyone in the city and not just the people that are struggling on the east side. But I think there is hazardous traffic conditions on the streets. I know a lot of you ride bikes. I don't know if on a busy day when people are coming to the beach and looking for parking spots, you feel safe doing that anymore. It's pretty troublesome, to say the least. And emergency vehicles, maybe we've been very lucky and haven't had a problem yet, but if East Gulf Boulevard is packed with cars driving and getting parking spots, and someone, God forbid, on Harbor Drive North or South needs that emergency vehicle, they still have to make their way through East Gulf Boulevard and all those streets before they get down to Harbor Drive or one of the finger streets. So it is all of our problems to think about. And you know, when I weigh all the things and talk about our small town neighborhood and keeping it safe, I think the positive effects from some of the items in this ordinance would definitely be part of our future, and I see more benefits than negatives. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. I think maybe we can refine and talk more about some of the parts of this parking ordinance, but this isn't the first time we've brought this up. You know, I have articles from 2014 where people were they were so up in arms about the parking, and every year we've gotten more and more and more, and having some of the other beaches charge a lot of money or be full, we've kind of taken over all that excess parking as well. So I hope everyone will consider that and think about it, and maybe we can move on with part of this ordinance.
Thank you, Diane. Good comments. Ed or Phil, would you like to say something?
I'd like to hear from you, Phil. Sure you would.
Stop it.
So we talked about enforcement, and some of the reasons that we have the lawlessness as it pertains to the rules around parking are a result of the fines being too low. It's cheaper to get a parking ticket here than to pay for parking in Clearwater, which is why I fully support raising the parking fines to $75.99 if we could, but seems like you guys wanted 75 only. I have received a whole lot of public comment, which is really good. I mean,
It really
emails and
is.
everything. So anyone who
Love
said
it.
we didn't communicate it, I hope that we've had vigorous debate, which is good. And this is the way that things should be deliberated. I am of the opinion that when I read the 28th Avenue, I guess I had my streets wrong. So I went over to check that map out and talk with Greg today. I didn't understand this would include the Harbor Drive fingers. I think it'd be a great experiment to exclude them, because if you take that out and they fill up with beach parking, we know the answer to the question. We could always come back and amend the map later. I have seen people driving their coolers. They have motorized coolers. They actually fill the cooler up with whatever prohibited liquids are there and drive it across Gulf Boulevard right onto the access and go to the beach with it. Interesting business idea, but I would also support leaving many of the existing signs, because they're not only for beach traffic, but they're also for the general flow of the city, especially some of the areas where, just because we put decals up doesn't mean we want to block other streets that we've, through the success of the city manager's efforts, been able to clear those up. The last thing I wanted to say to all of us is that tabling this is the easiest thing you could do, and you don't get paid to table things. So
Amen.
get to work. Let's go.
Amen.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
Wow. A tough call. It really is. I sat here and listened to everything this evening, and there's not a panacea it's going to make everybody happy by any means. I kept hearing free parking. All the people from Clearwater and everywhere else come down here because it's free. I've been an advocate of charging for parking for a long time, and back even in the day you were talking about, I thought that would slow something down or at least make some revenue for the community. So it's kind of a cause situation. So is the issue of the traffic because of just an onslaught of people coming to the beach as normal, or is it the fact that it's free? So if you were to do something to change the free parking aspect of it, where would the people go? It's a catch-22, because if you cut the traffic off, or at least reduce it, is what I would be hopeful to do. What happens to the businesses? That is what Commissioner McCall was talking about. You strangle the business. So it's a real tough call. But I would certainly look at that. I think the signs have been working, and I'm like Joe. I haven't heard of any accidents with fire trucks and things. They have an SOP that says if a street's blocked, they're going right through the car. They can legally do that. And even though that would not be wouldn't want my car to have that happen, but so they're going to be able to get back to what they're going to do. Does anybody feel that maybe we might want to do a little more of a comprehensive study as to certain areas of where these signs might be? I know we have some indication data that shows it's working, but before we actually adopt this thing one way or the other, kind of see what's out there and see what we're dealing with, just throw that out. That's all I have.
What's interesting to me is whether you didn't want parking on your street, or you wanted more you wanted more restrictions, or you didn't want more restrictions. Everyone still believed in the small town atmosphere. Everybody still wanted to make sure that we're safe, and everyone wanted to really reach out to all of the citizens in Indian Rocks Beach. So how do we do that? How do we come to the middle? I don't want to see something that is more polarized on each side. I want to see us all, for the greater good of everyone, that we find a solution to this problem. And I think that we should take, and I agree with Ed that I do think we should do something. And I do think that what Greg has put into place to start with, about a year and a half ago, RB and I had a discussion about it. We did agree that there has been a change in the last 5 years. We know that there is more traffic. I do think that it was polarized as far as COVID, regardless, that's just my personal opinion on that. And so with that, I would like to see where the commission wants to go with this as far as this ordinance. Shall we tweak this? Shall we take some pieces of it that we like? Do we leave Harbor Drive out? Both the city attorney and the city manager, I spoke to them about that a long time ago, and they were not interested in thinking that that was the way to do this ordinance, that we have to find something that works for the entire community. So
Why?
Why?
Well, we've had earlier discussions today about other ordinance and how to educate the public. Part of the confusion that you create, we're not Manhattan. We're a small.
I agree with that.
We're a small beach town. The administrative issues that you get into if you just randomly decided to lop off fingers, whether it's Harbor Drive, because if you recall, when we had the work session, you had people on La Hacienda, you had them denied. They want parking restrictions. So you're automatically, some of the people that, if you go with the decal ordinance, they want that. The people on those fingers that want that. You heard a lot of the organized comments about Harbor Drive, but the biggest issue that we would get into is if you have part of our small town off Guth Boulevard, you turn off, and I've got to put signs up that say, somewhat in the narrative of what Beller Beach has done, where it says, no on-street parking from 9 to 5, without a resident permit only, $75 citation, whatever. Then I've got to do to find another line to educate people that, okay, then once you go past this street, it's a different set of rules. And I just think in our small town, that's just going to cause a lot of confusion with people. And I just don't think it's necessary. And if that's what you're doing, really what you're doing is you're sticking with option A. Because option A, which we've been doing since 2014, has regulated the areas immediately off the beach. And that's worked pretty well. So that's why my opinion is, and they're going to, I'll make very clear, just like I had to clear up that I'm not telling you to table, I told you to table anything. You can adopt whatever you want. I'm obligated to tell you the administrative side of it and the challenges of the confusion of the zones end and begin, and there's just a lot to that. And I think we create as many problems chopping up from 5th to 28th if you lop off the fingers, and then we have to figure out how to regulate that. I just think that creates a lot of confusion and problems.
Randy, did you want to say something?
Not especially there. No, I just want to clarify to characterize my response to the inquiry about doing it that way. My first point was administratively as to size, but it ties to pragmatism. I think, as I've advised you in the past, as we consider ordinances, let's not divide. My consistent advice has been to not devise a solution in search of a problem. And so I encountered this in other communities, especially as it relates to parking, where you start discussing a global solution to a problem that seems to be endemic to a few blocks. And so my concern was, and having nothing to do with the input of tonight, my comments were provided, as the mayor aptly noted some time ago, which was, well, what if we did this versus this versus this? And it was a tripartite approach. And my advice was, if you're trying to find a uniform solution and you see yourself having to morph it as you travel a few blocks, then perhaps your solution is not a legislative one, but an administrative one in the form of signs or otherwise. And the feedback at the time had been that signs were effective. So that was my advice. My advice was not legally, it's completely untenable and you'll never see anything like this in any community. And that was not the point made, just from a function of pragmatism and drafting and otherwise, making sure that if you're looking for variable solutions in a series of small carve-outs, then a legislative solution may not be the best method.
Yes, sir.
One other thing that Phil, I asked, and I feel like I need to respond to it. It's kind of tied to what Commissioner Hufnagel said a few minutes ago. You know, we've talked. I've been here for 7 years. We had all these multiple sessions. We had meetings in 2014. We know what all the issues are. So you have a draft ordinance. If you want to go forward with it, you need to make that decision. And then we can, I know Commissioner Flagg and I have talked about some things that she'd like to see if we go forward with it. It should be tweaked, but there's no more study to be done. It's pretty cut and dry about what the issues are. It's just a matter of what y'all want to do with it.
Mayor, there's people responding that the commission and the mayor are not speaking directly into the mic, and people are having trouble hearing you, specifically Commissioner Vice Mayor Hanna. Well, if you could speak a little bit closer, and if the city attorney could speak directly into the mic.
I will make every effort to do so.
We do apologize for that, and we will, thank you for telling us, so everybody speak up.
Procedurally, as we move forward, it is presently 9:25. According to your rules of procedure, if we're going to go beyond 9:30, we need a majority vote of the body. Since we're sort of between things, I thought I'd raise that at this time.
Is there a motion to continue for?
Motion to continue.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Yes.
Joe, are you
Thank
in
you.
favor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
I would like
Go
just
ahead.
a chance to respond. I do think that if the ordinance had the number 27 instead of 28, Fifth Avenue to
can you
20.
speak up a little bit? Because I can barely hear you.
If it said Fifth Avenue to 27th Avenue, it would exclude Harbor Drive. We would not have to go through a lot of legal definitions to make the map smaller. We just have to go down one avenue to 27th because Harbor Drive, if I'm reading the map correctly, there's a spot where you got to get onto that east Gulf Boulevard and get over towards Brown Park. So I don't think it's that hard to draw a little line there and say, from here on out, you got to have a decal. But that's my own personal opinion. I'm not an administrator.
I would also like to what has been put into place is working, and I think that needs to be mentioned and not, made light of, and I don't know if that's the correct wording that I'm trying to say, but it is working, what we have been doing. And we, the staff, their idea is to continue working on going down streets where there are issues, working with the fire department, and seeing where we do need to put more parking, no parking signs. So, on that respect, that was where we were going. And with the enforcement and all of the other items that have been brought forward in saying that, does this commission want to make a decision as far as what they want to do with this ordinance? Is there a motion for this ordinance as it reads now?
Motion to deny the ordinance as written.
Okay, there's a motion to deny the ordinance as written. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There is a second. Do you have any comments to make on that? Commissioner McCall?
Yes, I just, as many people have pointed out, I do feel the city's been doing a fantastic job with what they've done. I do not feel that this is the time and place to place additional hindrances on our businesses and our community. For this commission to put those additional burdens. As Mr. Jenkins from Krabby Bill spoke about, they have some uphill battles coming forth. And really, I would like to see what the administration, the city manager, and focus of our enforcement sheriff's department and new code enforcement person on the weekend. Let's see what they can accomplish. If not, we can address in the future if it continues to get out of hand. As a side note, if for some reason you do decide to move forward, I would like to ask that Bahia Vista gets left out also.
Okay.
If you're leaving out Harbor Drive.
Vice Mayor, would you know, it's your turn to.
Mayor, I just wanted to add as we proceed, because there's just procedurally, we're in a slightly unorthodox posture. The motion on the floor and seconded by Commissioner Hanna is to deny the ordinance. So as we move forward and you discuss, it's most especially as you get towards voting, a yes vote will be a vote to eliminate the ordinance, not pass it. And a no vote will be for it not to fail. This, again, I know this comes up periodically, but why we try not to make a motion in the negative is this can happen, but there's nothing that prevents it from being done. And so I just wanted to proceed as you continue in your discussions, make it explicitly clear for those in attendance, those digitally, and those and the commission that the motion on the floor is to deny it. So an aye vote would be one for its failure.
Is there, what would you like to make some comments?
Yes. I agree with what Randy said earlier relative to administratively handling this. There's not just one cure to fit this whole problem. Put decals on, that's fine. Cut certain streets off, you cut traffic down, possibly. You hurt businesses, possibly. But I believe in letting Greg and the staff decide we've got a problem here on East Lake or East Gulf Boulevard. Solve for that. Don't try to have a one-size-fits-all. We can always go back and bring this back again. If it doesn't work, we can always go that route. So I think the easiest thing to do is to try continuing with the signs, evaluating how those are doing. If they don't work, we can go back and bring this up and how we have our proof.
Diane, would you like to make a comment?
Well, do I have to vote on this now? Because I was hoping we could work on this ordinance and maybe relieve some of the problems that a lot of the residents are having with parking. We've gone through the throes almost every year of hearing about complaints, and the signage has helped some. There's 50%, you said, Greg, about 50% of the east side has signage now for no parking. Well, the other 50% is still open for daily beachgoers to come through the community and park wherever they want, and still cause havoc with a lot of the streets on the east side of Gulf Boulevard. And once those people park and walk up through the east side and they're on the west side, there have been many people on the west side who complain about the excess congestion on the beaches and the excess trash on the beaches and the irresponsible behavior to our environmental conditions on the beaches. So there's a lot of things that curtailing the excess parking can address. I recognize that some of these streets don't have problems, and if the answer is to put no parking on the whole east side from 5th to 28th, then perhaps next year the finger streets will come back and ask to have decal parking on their streets, because it's just a matter of someone finding free parking along our beaches now. There's no easy remedy to pass it.
Ed, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm happy that the parking fines are in the next ordinance, because even if we decide to deny this, and I want to say it's better that we either approve it or deny it, not table it, because we can always come back in a work session and design it again if we don't like it. But I applaud a decision instead of a tabling. Thank you.
Greg, I would like to suggest in a specific time period, maybe 6 months or 9, whatever is appropriate, that we do a review of enforcement. If there are additional parking areas that have been added, safety, would that be a possibility?
Yes.
And then we could, during that review, if we had further issues, we could move in a new direction. Okay. All right, with that, if there are not any more questions or comments on this, Deanne, I'm going to have you take the roll.
Commissioner Flagg?
Well, I think that I would have to vote no, just because I want the people that have been needing the help and have voiced their opinions, their voice needs to be heard. So I would say no to denying the ordinance.
Commissioner Hoofnagel?
Yeah, I would also say no.
Vice Mayor Hanna?
Yes.
Commissioner McCall?
Commissioner McCall, are you muted?
Yeah, sorry. That was a yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes. Motion carries 3 to 2.
3 to 2.
And we will have an update review in a specific period of time.
The ordinance was denied.
Correct.
Yes. Right, and the administrative request was to revisit at a later date.
Thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate all your comments. For this part, we do have more on the ordinance, more ordinances tonight. Greg,
Can I request a 5-minute recess?
you may make a comment.
He asked for a 5-minute recess.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Can we recess?
Yes, sir.
Wait, one more.
What is this for? Okay, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. With that, we are going to move to agenda item 7B, ordinance number 2020-08, first reading. Randy, would you read this?
Happily, Madam Mayor, before I begin, I'd like to note for the record that the council members were provided a revised version of ordinance 2020-08. I'll be reading the title as to the revised version, handed out in hard copy following the failure of the previous ordinance. Ordinance 2020-08, an ordinance of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 62, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 2, Stopping, Standing, and Parking, increasing the fee for parking violations, restricting the hours of parking on the city's beach accesses, amending the requirements for securing a resident parking permit decal, specifying permissible uses of a resident decal, repealing the provision for temporary guest parking permits, amending the fee for replacing a city-issued parking permit, providing for severability and an effective date. This has been a first reading of ordinance number 2020-08 by title only, Madam Mayor. The reason for the revised ordinance is the previous ordinance included administrative language concerning the elements for applying for a parking decal and the proof necessary for that, and also the process for that application. With the failure of that amendment and wanting to make sure that that administrative language was set forth, that is in the revised ordinance you have, of course, based on community feedback and otherwise. Your manager and I anticipated there was a possibility that the last ordinance may fail, and in an effort to be prepared and also provide you the most effective ordinances, we added that. And so with that in mind, this ordinance otherwise increases the fee, as I think one commissioner mentioned an interest in. I can't seem to remember whom.
It was me.
It was a jest.
Just as a point of order,
yeah.
Randy, sorry, I would move that we have time to read this. I haven't had time to read it, so I would just move that we would discuss this at the next meeting. I have not had a chance to read it. I appreciate you may have done something that you've thought about it. I haven't had a chance to see it, and I'm not comfortable being asked to make a decision without having the chance to.
I understand, and totally respect that. I just want to make sure I'm clear for the record. It is exactly in its prior form, the only addition being the section that was in the last ordinance about what you need to submit to prove that you're entitled. It's a copy, paste, and pull of that language, and the second language, sorry, let me just make sure I get the heading right. The language pertaining to specifically entitlement to non-transferable parking by permit only decals and application for parking permits. That same language that was in the ordinance that just failed has been moved into this. That is the only substantive difference between the version that was circulated to you in advance of the meeting and this version, and that was because absent that language, there would be nothing in the code that was as explicit as this was designed to be. With that, I leave this, I defer to the manager at this point.
Well, I guess, it's really up to the commission. I think Randy's explained that what we just handed you is, there's only minor changes.
It's on page 3 of 7.
And it's things that were in the ordinance that you just denied that need to be in this ordinance if it's a standalone. And there are a lot of important parts that I need to cover about what you're considering, but I'll wait till y'all decide if you're gonna go forward. But
You said page 3 of 7?
On the handout provided, yes, Madam Commissioner.
Are the changes that are marked on here the changes that you made on this version as opposed to the changes from the original ordinance, or is it both?
It's true as to both. That was new language in the last ordinance. Because that ordinance fails, that new language is brought into this ordinance to ensure it finds its way administratively into the code as it relates to the facilitation of the permit process. So it would be new language either way, and it has nothing to do with parking in residential districts, times, or anything like that. It's just on page 3 of 7, there is a sub C and a sub D. If you, that language was in the other ordinance. It's been migrated into this to ensure, while still addressing the other elements that were in the version you had before you, which was the restrictions on elimination of the one kinds of temporary parking permit, the application fee, the increased fine, et cetera. I just added in C and D, which were in the other version, the other ordinance that just failed.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
can I get a copy of that?
Operationally, no. I would just, consensus would be, if I could suggest you ask for
Yes.
consensus, could you?
I think we should wait because Commissioner McCall doesn't have, does he have this paperwork?
no, I don't. I can't wiggle my nose and transfer documents.
I can have it to him shortly via email if he has access to email. Regardless, I respect this body's decision moving forward procedurally.
I need a commissioner to make a,
I think we can have consensus not to bring this up and just strike it from the agenda today. We'll bring it up. A month won't change it. It's okay.
is the commission in agreement with that?
I would say procedurally, since we're not at additions, deletions, if you're going to do this, I would suggest tabling it to the next meeting, just so it's procedurally clean. If that is your.
So I would make a motion to table this.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay.
Without prejudice as to the merits of the ordinance.
Understood. Thank you, Commissioner.
Craig?
I do think it's important. We've had a lot of feedback from the public about this ordinance in the last 2 or 3 days. Just to prepare the commission and just as important, the public, if you would give me 5 minutes, I think it's a good idea to make sure everybody fully understands what's in here, what it means.
Yep.
And that way, when it comes back up, I think we'll be better suited to have the conversation.
Yep.
If you'd let me do that.
1 second. Commissioner McCall, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Are you in agreement with the consensus of the rest of the commission?
Yes.
Okay.
And now that we're kind of flying off the shelf here, now that I sit here and think about this, the administrative problem this cause for not moving this forward at the meeting and then have the second reading in December is that the decals that we have that are in place, they expire at the end of December. And if you delay it, and I'm not telling you what to do, I'm just telling you the practicality. If you delay it, then you're not going to take it up for the second reading until January. So we can be in a month or so of a limbo if you want to. I've ordered decals, I'll have decals, but depending on if you pass this or not, how you pass it's going to dictate how we issue decals. So I just want to make you aware that we're going to lapse into the. Yeah,
Could we have a special meeting, a second special meeting in December for just that?
Just, with Christmas and all, there's just no way, and that's not fair to the public because there's so many people that are out of town, and then you'll get complaints about, the public being able to attend. So, I guess we could, if you don't take it up tonight and you have the first reading in December and the second reading in January, I guess just for that month that we're kind of in limbo or that short time frame, we'll just honor the decals that the people are using until y'all adopt whatever you adopt. I guess we can do it that way.
Is that, thinking it through, is that?
Yeah, we can wing it for a couple of weeks into January.
I apologize
That's
about all of this on all sides.
So if I can, and because I do think it's a good idea now that we've had people, that are interested in this, just for me, just to hit the highlights of what this is, the implications of it, and then that'll be the end of it tonight, and it'll be back on the agenda. It increases the parking fine, as Ed has mentioned before, from the current rate up to $75. It also increases the fine at the city's boat ramp. In the current ordinance, there's a per axle penalty, and that gets real squirrely about axles and all that. So we just said, let's just simplify it. If you launch a boat illegally at the city's boat ramp, you're supposed to have a resident decal on the vehicle that you're using to launch. So that's what that is. Now, the biggest thing about this, and we talked about in the work session, but I just want to say it all publicly and tell you what this would mean if you pass it, is that for decades, since the city had the decal ordinance, at some point, I don't know when they started doing it, but if you came into City Hall and you were either a resident in the true sense of the term, you were registered, you had your vehicles registered at the 2109 Bay Boulevard, and you have a driver's license for 2909 Bay Boulevard, you could get a decal. But they also have, for some long period of time, have given decals to people that just own property. And the reason why that's important to understand that is that I don't believe in reading the ordinance the way it is in the books today, and you got it in front of you where there's pieces of it marked out. I believe the intent when the city adopted the ordinance was to issue decals to people that we would consider true residents of the city. So, an individual that lives in Canada who may be here 4 months out of the year, is the way the original ordinance was written, in my opinion, is not a resident of the city. So the way this is drafted, if you go forward with it, is that if you have a driver's license that has that address on it, your vehicle's registered to that address, you can get a decal if there's another addition for like a utility bill. So basically you're proving that you are a resident. And then for people that lease property, and I implemented an administrative thing a couple of years ago that we're requiring people that if you're leasing, like you're in an apartment or condo, you have to provide evidence that you've got a lease for at least a 1 year period of time, because we just have too many transit people coming through, and it just doesn't make sense to issue a decal if somebody's going to be here for 30 days or 60 days. So the point I'm making to you is that the way this is written clarifies what I believe was the original intent, is that if you're a true resident of the city, vehicle's registered, you got a driver's license, shows utility bill, you get a decal, because we've issued in the neighborhood of 2,500 decals, the lion's share of those are people that don't live there full time. Another thing you need to remember about the way the current ordinance is written and the way this draft is written is that there's no limit to that. So, and not picking on any industry, this has been a hot topic for 3 or 4 years, but to give you an example, if you don't stick with the true resident only, and you decide, well, that's not fair, let's give it to the resident only and people that own property. The thing you need to remember is that, and we keep talking about the same area, but this applies to everybody in the city, but in the area north of 5th, east of Guff Boulevard, south of 28th, there's 170 plus vacation rentals in town now. And if you don't keep this confined to true residents of the city, then the way it's been interpreted, and if you were to change it where it just said, if you did say property owners and residents, then what you could have happen is that we have one unnamed gentleman that I know that has 3 vacation rentals now that's from Memphis, Tennessee. He could come into City Hall and say, I've got 8 cars. I want decals for this address, that address, this address, and there's nothing the way the current ordinance has been administered. He can get all those. And my concern about that is that if somebody in that situation, if they're operating a vacation rental and they're not a true resident because they're operating a business out of a house, but is that what happens then is that what's going to happen with those is they're going to leave them at the vacation rental, and then the people that are here are going to use them and they're going to get passed around. The other reason why we need to be a little stricter on this is that, and I'll have many examples of this. I showed Cookie this, I think, today. This is an IRB resident decal. The current ordinance says, and even the new ordinance says, that your decal, if you get one, should be permanently affixed to the back of your vehicle. This is a decal that has a magnet on the back of it. And it's tied to a address where there's like multiple units. So what they were doing, they had multiple decals and they just get passed around. That's why I've seen IRB decals from here to Jacksonville to Orlando. I saw a vehicle, and it's just important to make sure I get all those on the record. So I know it'll take a little longer, but I think it's important. And that way y'all can think about this before the next meeting. I have a picture on my phone of a vehicle that I was behind. I was at the bridge, the drawbridge goes up, we all experienced that. And had my truck in park, and I was checking text messages and went driving, and I was still doing all that. And I looked up, and there was a lady in a Mercedes in front of me, and she had one of our decals on one side of her bumper, and she had a Bel Air Beach decal on the other side. And that's symbolic of what I want you to be aware of, because the reason why you need to fully understand this clarity of what we're proposing, I'm particularly proposing about who gets these decals, is that this has been abused greatly. We've even had, when you go to the beach accesses and you see the little decals on the signs, and we change those every 2 years to say, okay, we're using a new color. As long as you have this decal, we didn't have people steal those decals. They don't have numbers on them and stick on the back of cars. So if the original intent was that this is for residents, this is how this clarifies that and says that that's who's going to get those. And because some of the emails I've seen, they have a right to, everybody has a right to their opinion, is that there are probably, and I'm guessing, don't tell me the exact number, maybe the next meeting I can get you the exact numbers, but out of the 2,500 that we've issued, I would dare say that probably 1,500 of those are not what, if you're asking, we're talking about residents, full-time residents, those are not full-time residents. They're the person that Michelle and I have leased our house from 7 years, are Canadian. But anyway, I wanted to make that perfectly clear that this is what this does. It takes what I believe and the staff believes was the original intent, and it mandates that that the only people getting these are people that are residents. The other big thing, and you've seen some emails about it, is that beach accesses. And we talked about this in work session. In the ordinance, if you look on the version, the new version, which is page 4 of 7, there were 3 provisions for decals or hang tags. Number 1 was the whole decal topic, and I just talked about that. There's a second paragraph that is so vaguely written. It basically said, if you come into City Hall and you need temporary hang tags, you can just get them. It doesn't say how many you're limited to. It doesn't say how many days they're limited to. And I can tell you, let's say, I guess in my third 2-year cycle period where we issue new decals, we have people that, fellow residents that'll come in that live like on La Hacienda, they'll come in and say, I want 6 temporary hang tags for beach accesses, and there's nothing that says they can't have them. So they get them. So that's why in the draft, we had deleted number 2, because it's just, why is that so vague and what does it mean? And we replaced it with a requirement that if you're going to park at a beach access between 11 and 6 a.m., that you have a temporary parking decal that you pick up from the city. You pay for it, by the way, park on the beach access. Because that's the only way to regulate it. I will tell you another problem we had, another reason why we did the 11 to 6, and that's for everybody, that's for people that have decals, is that we have residents now, and I can take you in the next month if you want to see them, that go and park their trucks and their cars at the beach accesses for like a week, 2 weeks, a month. We have one guy that lives here that I think works out the country, and there's nothing that keeps him from doing it. And because the thing you have to remember is, and I understand the passions of people that say, well, if I own property, I should just get a decal. The problem that creates is that a number of our beach accesses, I think about 7 are the ones that we have, were built with grant money, and they were built to provide access to the beach. And then the rest of the beach accesses, I guess, is through the years the city paid for having them improved or whatever. So the point being is I've seen some emails where people will say like, well, I live in a condo, we have limited parking, so therefore we got to have, it's our right to have access to these beach access spots. And the problem is with these hang tags, if we don't clarify that and do a little better job with it, you literally can tie a bunch of spaces where cars don't move for half a day. So that's the other part that I've seen some emails about, is that people are not happy. Some people are not happy with, we're not going to be able to come to City Hall and get unlimited hang tags, and there's no limit on them, and we get them. Versus, look, if you're in a condo and you're having a party, or I saw one email from a guy that said, well, my son comes in town once a year for vacation. Well, that can be accommodated by, you come to City Hall, you get a temporary hang tag, and it's good for the length of time. So those are probably the 2 biggest things in this ordinance that you need to think about between now and the next meeting, is it clarifies and kind of ties down who gets decals, which is these things. And the other thing it does, it further restricts or clarifies who can park at the beach accesses and how they can do it. And that's all, subject to ultimately what the commission wants to do. So that's probably the 2 biggest things that I would, for the public's benefit that are watching, and for the commission, for y'all to look closely at, ask me questions, ask Randy questions about. But those are the 2 things that I've seen emails about that I just want to make perfectly clear. Not hiding anything here. That this is what this draft means.
Yes.
Greg, I have just an observation or a question. Every one of our tags is like a number assigned to that car, so that like my tag, that number belongs to my
Phil,
car.
speak into the mic.
I'm trying. Okay, that better? All right, so the question is, what if somebody like your magnetic demonstration here is a car stopped and they check that tag in that car and it doesn't match? How is that handled through?
Yeah, that would be considered as part of the current ordinance and the ordinance that the updated ordinance you're looking at.
Right.
As a violation of the code, you could cite somebody for doing that.
Do we have to specify what the fine would be, or?
That's all in the code.
Okay, perfect. That's good. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for the city manager?
No, thanks. I was afraid that some of that stuff got changed. That's why I was a little concerned. I'm happy with the design you guys did. So thank you.
Commissioner Flagg, do you have anything that you want to add? Commissioner McCall, do you have any questions or comments for the city manager?
I do not at this time. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I want to clarify where we are procedurally.
Okay.
It was my understanding there was a motion and a second to table this. After that, there seemed to be at least nodding heads, and then an inquiry made of Commissioner McCall if he was on board with the general consensus. Is it procedurally, it's my understanding you moved to table it to the December meeting with a second reading in January, and the commission and the city manager was just giving a briefings for edification for when it comes up at a later date. Just because now we're going around, I want to make sure that we all share that understanding procedurally.
Okay. Okay, so we're done with this.
Correct.
This ordinance, okay. Okay, moving forward, we will go to 7C, ordinance number 2020-09, first reading. Randy, would you read this ordinance?
Happily, Madam Mayor, ordinance number 2020-09, an ordinance of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 74 Waterways, creating Article 4 to be entitled Leave No Trace, creating Section 74-100, purpose and title, creating Section 74-101, definitions, creating Section 74-102, digging holes on beach, creating Section 74-103, obstructions on the beach and beach access areas prohibited, creating Section 74-104, exceptions, creating Section 74-105, permits, creating Section 74-106, fires prohibited, repealing Chapter 26, Environment, Article 5, Junk, Wrecked, or Abandoned Property, Division 1, generally, Section 26-131, confiscation of abandoned property, repealing Chapter 74, Waterways, Article 3, Beaches, Division 1, generally, Section 74-65, tents, canopies, volleyball nets, creating a leave no trace ordinance, prohibiting the leaving or abandonment of personal property on the city's beaches, prohibiting unfilled holes on the city's beaches, prohibiting the obstruction of the beach and beach accesses, providing for exceptions, providing for a permitting process, prohibiting fires on the beach, providing for legislative findings, and providing for an effective date thereof. This has been a reading of ordinance 2020-09 on first reading by title only, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. Greg, would you like to explain
thank you.
this entirety?
Sure. What we've encountered over the years is that the current ordinance that we have, it only references about 3 different things that you can't leave on the beach. It's volleyball nets. It's hold on a second.
Tents, canopies.
Yes, thank you. What this ordinance, to really get right to it and summarize it, is that basically if you bring it to the beach, you take it with you.
Correct.
And if you don't take it with you, this gives us authority to go down after 10 o'clock at night and pick them up. I would just tell you, and I'm sitting in an earlier work session, we've had this growing problem. We've had more and more what I call permanent beach chairs located on the beach, particularly on the south end of the beach, where in front of cottages, they'll have like 8 wooden chairs with their names, and they're out on the dry sand on the beach. But this is what this ordinance does. It clearly says if you bring it, you take it with you. And another thing that the way we're currently having to chase this is that by all the stuff that's left out there, it impacts our ability to pick up garbage, beach raking, and then it has a pretty huge impact when the turtle nesting season is on. So generally, with a 30,000 foot overview, this is what this does. In a real quick summary is bring it with you, take it with you. The only other comment I make is I know in the meeting that we all discussed it at the last meeting, I think with Commissioner Hoopnagel, we were talking about what do we do with the stuff when we pick it up. Another Tallahassee thing. There's a state law that if we pick something up, we have to retain it for 90 days and then we can get rid of it. I will just tell you the majority of what we pick up are the $99 canopy tents that you can pick up at a big box store. Majority of the time we pick those up, nobody ever comes and gets those because I think they're glad not to have to fold them back up and deal with them. So I would say I wouldn't get too hung up on the 90-day thing because what we pick up last year, what we pick up is not high dollar stuff. But unfortunately, we found no way to work around that. But I will tell you, I'm going to be as creative administratively as I can to dispose of things in a timely manner. Let's just put it that way. But so that's it, Mayor. That's the gist of it, and kind of what we're after. And this is modeled. When I say I'm sorry, this is modeled greatly like the ordinance that Indian Shores passed about a year ago. I think it's a lot of the wording, a lot of the same things are in there.
Do any of the commissioners have any comments that you would like to make or questions?
Yeah,
Ed?
we had talked about this briefly, Greg. There's one part in here which I felt was not clear that we were making sure that stuff didn't get stranded on the beach. I don't know when the appropriate time to discuss that is, but I'd like to point it out. There's in 74 103, Part D. It says from 10 to 6 a.m., items of property that are relocated as close to but not on the toe of the dune or where there are no dunes, I'm summarizing, will not be considered discarded by the owner. I'm concerned that might encourage people to think that they can just fold their stuff up and put it right before the dune and leave it there overnight. I'm concerned that may be interpreted.
No, I think that's a good point. And Randy and I talked about that, and maybe what I'd offer for the commission to consider is replacing the wording in that paragraph with the same wording that we had when y'all passed the customary use of dry sand. There's a paragraph in there, and I'll just read it. What it says, in lieu of what Ed just read. The dry sand area of the beach is defined as a zone of consolidated material that extends landward from the mean high water line to the place where there's a marked change in the material or form, or the line of permanent vegetation, usually the effective limit of storm waves, whichever is more seaward. That may be a way to, in that way too, the customary use ordinance where we regulate in this ordinance, it has the same verbiage, so that may not work for you, but I just throw that out as an idea.
What is the intention of this paragraph?
The intention of this paragraph and the language that the manager just proposed is trying to reconcile the legal principles on the beach as to who owns what and reinforcing where we can regulate. And so as you often have members of your community who are beachfront property owners asserting, once you get to this point, you're on my land and you need to stay off.
Yes.
This is saying, okay, so we're talking about the part that's not that. And so if they're going to relocate just beyond that line, then what they're doing is they're rolling the dice with how kind the private property owner is with them putting things off of what we consider to be the customary use public beach that we regulate and operate as a community.
But why are we even opening this up?
We're not opening it up. We're acknowledging its existence.
But the ordinance says take it with you.
Mm-hmm.
This paragraph suggests take it with you unless you put it somewhere. I'm not clear.
I would say that it's not saying in one breath take it with you or just put it on this part of the beach. It's saying take it with you from the beach, and when we're talking about the beach, this is what we mean.
Okay.
It's providing a boundary of reasonable expectation for the public to understand that area from which we will be removing property.
Wouldn't it be more clear to just say, property owners can store their own personal property on their own property and no one else can? I'm just not.
That's one way to construe it. However, the challenge and what we're approaching now is somewhat of a philosophical debate on what the beach is, which is part of the problem.
Okay.
And so in that sense, we are trying to acknowledge both what the legislature and otherwise has set forth as the beach and establish that we are cognizant of those legal parameters and we are only trying to regulate the area that is defined as the beach for those purposes. And I would, Greg, if you have something to add in that respect.
Yeah, I'll just say from an administrative standpoint, in the whole confusion about, it's literally from deed to deed, somebody can own different configurations on the beach. And that's a problem for the city, it's a problem for our code people, it's a problem for the sheriff's office. Is that administratively, the way we deal with the beach now, and however this is adopted and put in place, when we walk down the beach and you see where the dry sand is before you get to where we have sand dunes and see it and all that, is it basically where the trash cans are, the line, looking just sit there and look at it. Generally, I'm not going to instruct the employee to climb over a sand dune to go get a chair or go get something else, because I have no way of knowing where, because if we went back and pulled beach renourishment maps, and it's like, it's not our city, it's everywhere, it literally does this. And I'm just not going to put our people in, so I think it's an attempt to say, in the area that y'all already defined as the customary by this ordinance where people can't block off people's rights, these two definitions would match up, and that's generally where it is. It's that straight line where everything kind of behind the trash cans. We don't go back there.
Yeah, but I think that's the right way to do it. I just think we should make it apparent that the property owner then has the responsibility for removing junk if someone throws junk on their property. I want to make sure that this doesn't get read to make people think that, oh, what are you talking about? I put it behind the dune. If someone puts it behind a dune, then the property owner might be encouraged to take it.
And the only way we could really deal with that, just if that happened, and that could very well happen, where somebody just slings stuff and it winds up where it winds up, is that we would just have to approach property owners on a case-by-case basis and say, it appears that this pile or whatever may be on your property. And of course, all the beach owners are going to tell us real quick whether that's their property or not. And if it is, we'd have enforcement ability to say, well, now that you've acknowledged that it's your property, it's debris or junk, you need to do something with it. So there's a way to deal with it. But it strictly would have to be on a case-by-case basis. We'd have to communicate with the property owner and first determine whether they even own out to where we're talking about.
No other questions. Thank you.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions? No. Phil? No. Commissioner McCall, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just real quick, and you guys may have answered it in your definitions. I was just noticing one thing that was stricken through from the previous ordinance. It looked like there was an exemption for the riparian rights of any association and or person on the beach. Is that, I guess, in lieu of the new definitions? Or I guess, why did that change? Or was my question.
What page are you looking at, or where are you?
I'm at I'm at section 7465, number 6, item D.
Yeah, I like that. That's the one I was talking about, yeah. That was stricken, yeah. It basically says this section shall not affect or in any way restrict the riparian rights of property owners.
That, and commissioners, you were saying, so that we can make that clear, that's, as you were discussing it, my thought was we would just include saying language that says nothing in this ordinance shall be construed to limit those rights. And of course, it's not our intention to do so, which is why we're trying to delineate, this is ours, this is yours. Of course, we're not saying how you use your property. If somebody puts stuff, just like at my home, which is nowhere near a beach, if someone starts, putting their chairs on my grass, I can throw their chairs out.
Yeah, that's, I think, Greg's definition of the beach being the revised definition.
And then paired with that.
I think that's fantastic, yeah.
And that's something that can be done between first and second reading, no issue.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner McCall?
Oh, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are not any more comments from the commission, I will open the public hearing. First, I will go to Matt. Is there anyone on Zoom or that would like to speak?
Madam Mayor, I have a comment from Kelly Cicerik, 448 Harbor Drive South. Requirement for filling holes on the beach, that section is sort of silly. Next high tide fills in the holes. Also, you'd have to cite the sea turtles for next building.
Is there any other questions or comments? Okay. With that, I'm going to go to the public hearing in the auditorium. Is there anyone who would like to come forward at this time and speak? Please state your name and your address. Hi, John.
John Fansteel, 448 Harbor Drive South. I support the purpose of all this Leave No Trace. I go running on the beach, and every time I go running, I stop multiple times to pick up trash. So I very much like what you're trying to do with this, and everything sounds good. I would suggest that we be even more bold. It wouldn't be in this particular ordinance, but looking ahead, I think it would be great if we do things like have been done on Rainbow River, where you pass an ordinance that bans disposable food and drink containers. That's gone a tremendous way to keeping Rainbow River pristine. It's been done elsewhere. And if you want to go one step further, you could ban plastic toys for the kids. Again, so many times when I go running on the beach, there's toys that have been left near the water line, and sooner or later they end up in microparticles in the fish that we eat. So looking ahead, I think it would be wonderful to consider those two things if you really want to strengthen the Leave No Trace behind. And just to follow up on Kelly's, that is pretty weakly defined. It doesn't say whether a hole is 4 inches deep or 5 inches deep. And I know you don't want to have children trying to fill in holes when lightning is crashing down around them when those summer thunderstorms come up. So that might need a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you. John. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this time? Please come forward. Who are you?
Random
RV.
beach hermit. RB Johnson, 1206 Beach Trail. Yeah, I had brought up to Ed the other day, a few days ago, the whole issue about that one section that was a little bit ambiguous about whether or not people could store their stuff up against the toe of the dune and what kind of a problem that could cause. It sounds like the customary use definition that would prevent people from essentially doing that would probably cover the territory. You know, as far as the private property goes, up and down the beach, most of the dunes now go anywhere from 80 to 100 feet out from the seawall, and most people's private property is at the most, say, 40 feet from the seawall. Some places, if you get on the 7th Avenue, it's probably only 10 feet or something like that, because the riparian, the erosion control line that demarcates the difference between the private property, or potentially was private property, and the state-owned beach, it's more or less in the middle of the dunes. It's nowhere near the outer edge of the dunes. So if somebody's putting their stuff out in the outer edge of the dunes, they're not on private property almost anywhere. But there's a lot of places that do have piles of beach chairs and kayaks and whatnot right below their seawalls, and obviously they can, that's their private property. I don't think the city's looking to ban that. Sometimes there's kind of in between areas where there's not any vegetation a little farther out, and they may be tempted to put stuff a little farther out and whatnot, but I think that can all be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. But I think the biggest problem that we're trying to deal with is out there in the dry sand between the dunes and the water, where people leave piles of chairs or their canopies or those big lounger wooden chairs that some of the establishments have started putting out there and tend to be an impediment for the turtles and whatnot. So it seems like y'all pretty much have a good grasp of this, and I appreciate what you've been doing with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else who'd like to speak at this time? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to approve ordinance 2020-09 with two modifications. One is to update the definition under 74-103D to be revised to make reference and to be descriptive of the beach, consistent with our other definitions of the beach in our code. And second, to add a notation that nothing in this ordinance shall take away anyone's riparian rights.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other comments from the maker?
Good job, guys. This is tough. I think you did a good job with it. Thank you.
Commissioner Flagg, any comments? Vice Mayor Hannah, do you have any comments on this?
No.
Commissioner McCall, do you have any comments?
I do not. Thank you.
With that, Deanne, would you call the roll?
Yes.
Commissioner McCall?
Yes.
Commissioner Flagg?
Yes.
Commissioner Hoofnagel?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes, motion passes. With that, we will move on to agenda item 7D, ordinance number 2020-10, and a first reading. Randy, would you please read this ordinance?
Happily, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2020-10. An ordinance of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 38, Parks and Recreation, Article 2, Parks, Section 38-31, Park Hours, Special Events, amending Article 3, Skate Facility, Section 38-51, Hours of Operation, amending Article 4, Nature Preserve, Division 1, generally, Section 38-100, General, amending Division 2, Boardwalk, Section 38-116, Usage Regulations, amending Article 5, Keegan Clare Boat Dock, Section 38-140, Hours of Operation, amending the hours of operation throughout the city, reserving repealed sections, providing for legislative findings, correcting Scrivener's errors, and providing for an effective date thereof. This has been a first reading of ordinance number 2020-10 by title only, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. Greg, would you like to introduce this and explain
Yes.
in detail?
Yes, ma'am. Basically what this does is that the parks, and I'll go through them, the parks that we have that don't have lighting, don't really have any function for nighttime activities, Brown Park, the nature preserve specifically, those would close at dusk. The boardwalk, which is listed in Randy's cover memo, that's actually within the nature preserve, so it also would be closed at dusk. Keegan Clare Park, I'm gonna ask for 3 minor tweaks, changes to this. One is on page 2B at the top of the page where it says Brown Park Nature Preserve. Some people already consider the 12th Avenue Park as part of they kind of lump it in with the nature preserve. I just want to be clear about it. That I asked that we, on that paragraph, we add Brown Park Nature Preserve in the 12th Avenue Park. That way that whole compound is affected by those regulations. The second change I'd asked for, because the more I read this, and this is not, it was something that I missed, and it was kind of one of those aha moments, is that Keegan Clare Park, the way it's written right now, is open from 7 to 9, and then Keegan Clare Boat Docks is open from 7 to 11. And the reason why that needs to be changed, Keegan Clare Park needs to be changed to 11 because you have to walk through the park to get out to it. So that doesn't make any sense to that. So Keegan Clare Park should match the boat docks where they're open from 7 to 11, those two things. And the last thing, which is also a minor change, and this is not something that we put in the new ordinance. It's something that's in the ordinance that we have today. If you look at page 3, it's A at the top of the page. It says fires and fireworks are prohibited, which is fine. And then it says grills for cooking may be used in designated areas. My public services director got with me, and we want to strike that because there's no appropriate place in the nature preserve in that park to have a fire. In fact, I believe the grant that we got when the nature preserve was built, it precluded open fires and pits. So just to make sure there's not any questions about that, I'd ask that under A at the top of page 3, the second sentence where it says grills for cooking may be used in designated areas, that just be struck. But the 3 changes to recap is add 12th Avenue Park on the list of parks that closed at dusk, change the Keegan Clare Park to 11 because they're against in the commercial area. And if you bring your boat down there in the evening, you got to walk to the park. So that needs to be the same. And then strike that one sentence where it talks about grills and just eliminate that. And that's basically it. That's what we're trying to accomplish by doing this. Because I would say for the record, as I said in the work session, my 7.5 years of experience working here is that particularly the nature preserve, there's nothing that is good that goes on in the nature preserve after the sun goes down. I can give you details later if you want to talk to me.
Is there anyone who has any questions for Greg at this time?
We can't close the beach accesses, right, at night? We can't shut them down?
You can bring that up.
Nothing good goes on there after.
I don't think I want to go there, but you can.
All right.
Commissioner McCall, do you have any questions for the city manager?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing that there aren't any more questions amongst the commissioners, I'm going to turn it over to Matt. Do you have anyone on Zoom who would like to speak to this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing to the auditorium. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing, and we're looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2020-10.
With changes?
Amendments.
With the
changes.
changes? Okay. And who is taking the second?
I'll second that, in the amendment.
Any comments from the maker or the second?
No.
You
Hearing
have the
none.
amendments, right?
Hearing none. Deanne, would you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Hannah,
Yes.
Commissioner McCall,
Yes.
Commissioner Hufnagel,
Yes.
Commissioner Flag,
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 8, work session items and discussion only. We have none for tonight. Moving on to our agenda item number 9, other business. Is there any other business to come before this board tonight?
We want to revisit this, or is that not possible procedurally? The one that Craig walked us through, do we want to revisit that? Are we allowed to procedurally?
Procedurally, the motion was to table it to the December meeting.
Yeah.
And so
So no.
I would suggest not at this point.
And my concern also would be that we've had a number of people drop off.
Yeah.
And they may just say, okay, they're not talking about it. So I'd hold on.
Thank you. No, new business.
And with that, we will move on to agenda item number 10, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
What about other business?
That was other business.
Oh, I have something for other
Okay,
business.
sure.
In regard to our parking discussions, Lee Wilkerson called in, and I've also talked to a few people regarding our parking, since everybody uses it now for beach parking. I know 2 weekends ago, I tried to go to the park with my granddaughter, and there were no parking places at Cole Park or at Brown Park. They were all beach people. They're parking. So he mentioned a suggestion for a 2-hour maximum at our parks, so people could come and go, especially our Little League and our senior baseball that's around Cole Park. Since we have beach parking all around on the street, sometimes they have difficulty getting spots. So might we want to consider something like that around our public parks?
Greg?
I would not recommend that. I've never seen the Cole Park or all the parking that we have around City Hall when it's full. Maybe July the 4th that may have happened, but routinely that doesn't happen. As far as a 2-hour limit administratively, you need to add me another person or two to do that, because then I gotta chalk tires and have to keep a log and have to do that. I don't see that, work and live here, I don't see that as a regular issue, and administratively, I would not recommend that.
Do any of the other commissioners have any comments on this? Ed? Commissioner McCall, do you have any comments on the suggestions by Commissioner Flagg?
Do not. Thank you.
Okay. With that, is there any other business to come before this board tonight? Are you going to speak in the mic from now on? I am. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner McCall.
Second from everybody.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just thank everybody, the staff, the commission. Everybody worked really hard on all of these. It's been a long and hard night. Thank you.